call the regular, sort of regular select board meeting to order. Today is June 18th. It's about 90 degrees Fahrenheit in lovely Hardwick, Vermont. First item is set adjust agenda. Does anybody have any changes, additions, subtractions? We're gonna roll with the agenda we have. Next is select board to approve minutes from last time, which was June 4th. Do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Any discussion on the minutes from last time? Anybody have anything? Correction?
Good to me.
Looked good to me. Thank you to the notes taker. I don't remember, was that Amanda last time? Yeah. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes as written, please say aye.
Aye.
And that's everybody, I think. Yep. We're just like the Zoom. Raise your hand. Communication from the audience.
Yeah, I wanted to,
Oh, could you state your name, please, first?
Ross Conway, I wanted to talk about the banner that was removed from the bridge.
Okay.
Whether that's coming up in someplace else in the meeting or not.
I don't think we have it as an agenda item, so if you would like to communicate something, now would be a good time.
Okay, Sean and I had a conversation the other day about it, and when he saw the banner and I saw the banner, we had different impressions of what the banner was indicating. And when I looked at the banner, there were two words on it, racism and democracy. And there was an arrow pointing off of racism and another arrow pointing off democracy, and they were pointing in opposite directions. And the way the bridge runs, east to west, I guess, like it is across the river, the arrow going off racism was pointing west, and the arrow coming off democracy was pointing east. And my interpretation was that racism and democracy are pointing in two different directions. And I'll let Sean speak for himself, but my understanding is that's not how he interpreted it. And so he made the decision, correct me if I'm wrong, to have the banner removed. And I think it was the wrong decision, and I would like to see the banner put back up there. And so now I wanted to, as I say, Sean and I met the other morning and talked about it. So I just wanted to bring our thoughts to the board.
So, I guess, thank you for bringing it up. And I think probably as a board, we need to have at least a small discussion about the signs on town property, and especially now, you know, how we deal with that when people are trying to do kind of a peaceful protest sort of a thing that isn't really a sign, like advertising like a business or, you know, something. And I don't know. Yeah, Cherry?
I did have an idea about, for when we talked about the resolution, that possibly part of the resolution could include a space, a designated place where people could put up signs and banners and things, and potentially, I mean, it's just because this morning all the stuff showed up in the Peace Park.
Yeah.
Which seems like an more appropriate spot.
Okay.
And it could be, kept to one place, and then people could have it, we could determine like an amount of time that things could stay up.
Right.
Then it would address both things and allow for some people to, do those things, but not necessarily have them all around town and,
Yeah.
like spots that are appropriate or not appropriate or whatever.
Okay.
If we designated a place, that it could be part of the resolution, and then that way it would deal with this particular moment in time and people's desire to participate.
So your proposal is to discuss that in item, as part of item number 7?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Everybody good with that? All right. So,
Just as a point of information, does the town have any policies about,
we do, when Sean brought a copy, we do have, and I think he
is it in
said,
the packet?
It's in the packet.
Past minutes, the next item has some minutes,
Okay.
but not permitted time locations.
I can offer a few comments during my report if that would be valuable about what the current policy lists and maybe just a little bit more.
yep,
So it is,
Sounds good.
there's a policy that was passed as of 2011 by the select board.
all right. Thank you, Ross. Any other communication from the audience? All right, we're gonna roll into town manager report, Sean Fielder.
Okay, let me cover just some operations and logistics items, and maybe what I could do is at the end cover the sign discussion, if that'd be okay for everybody.
Yep.
We had an elevator valve repair done for this building, the Memorial Building, by Otis Elevator. So after a little bit of troubleshooting, I think we're in decent shape. We had our inspection by our company that will be is charged with making sure everything's in order so that we get our 1-year inspection certificate issued from the state of Vermont. So that's going to be moving forward, and everything's in good shape there. We did in this last week and a half, we did one final cleanup of the Cary Road property for some of the material that was left behind, actually on the Cary Road access side. And that was with some of the reserve funds that were already put aside. So we've got a little bit left in that fund, but as far as cleanup is concerned, we're at a point, we're in a holding pattern. So why that's important is just recognize we have an existing garage on the property as well as an old house. And for now, not planning to do anything in regards to moving of structures until we build that fund back up and decide what we're going to be doing moving forward.
So I have a question about that, and I don't know if Tom or Sean, one of you, has information, but the last time I went by there, it looks like the house that's kind of just uphill on Cary Road has like maybe some junk cars that are like working their way downhill.
Yeah, and I can comment on that. I did talk to the owner last week about he's going to have to take some actions to get those removed because it needs to be taken care of. So I'm monitoring that. I don't believe those are encroaching on the town's property, but it is greater than 5 cars. We have to take action, and we're working on that.
Okay. I don't know where the property lines are exactly, but I think the town also owns a property that was once the Hardwick Woodbury Rail Trail, or railroad through there.
Yeah, I think what happened was, my memory, I was on the rail committee briefly when that was happening, is that the trail actually goes basically through his house.
Yeah.
And so we
On the land.
ended up saying, well, if we can use the bottom of your property instead and go around the house. And so we agreed to that. And so some of it looks like where we used to be using the rail trail
Yeah.
before this.
Yeah.
I think some of that is actually, I think that's actually his property at the rail trail.
Okay.
Our use was on,
Okay.
my memory of it anyway.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
so,
right.
so his property extends a little more than it looks like.
Okay.
maybe.
The owner did indicate he's talking to his son about trying to take some action in the near future, so we're trying to get some progress there, so we'll
Okay.
keep on that. I did, following the brief discussion about the Buffalo Mountain Tower and the advance award filing, I did double check with Brian Ferrant with the electric department. He did confirm with me 2 days ago that they haven't seen any more information from AT&T in regards to AT&T contacting and working with HED to verify they can meet their construction standards, and that's what was reported last time out, so I'm just verifying that. So
Okay.
no change there, but just confirming there's nothing that would indicate at this phase that AT&T has met the construction standards. Brian indicated there's some additional work, and AT&T is working on that, but nothing has changed.
Okay.
The Pedestrian and Traffic Safety Task Force did a walk around last week. My apologies to the group. I had a conflict and I wasn't able to take part. Trying to pull together those final recommendations and suggestions. That would then be offered up to the select board for safety improvements, if you will, for the village and downtown area. For next steps, zoning administrator Kristen is compiling information, and then what we would do is myself and Tom and Aaron would be looking at what is being suggested, just to review, make sure it's making sense, if you will, and the intent, of course, being push it up to the select board so that the select board can make some determinations. What do we want to implement? Sherry and or Wiz want to offer anything? They're both on the task force. If you want to offer anything else on this.
I wasn't certain that, of the order of things, but it's all fine. I hope that we're gonna be able to get those recommendations in front of us, maybe even for the next meeting, because they really are pretty much done.
Yep.
So hopefully we're gonna be able to get those here to this group so we can start to look at them. They're
Okay.
not, there's a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable because our next meeting is the third week of July, if I'm not mistaken, so it's a month out. I think that's pretty reasonable, I believe, with the information at hand. So that's my quick response.
Oh, right, because we usually skip the 4th of
Skip
July.
the 4th of July week.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I want to just reiterate, I did have some questions and some follow-up on recall in the past, we had the request for, can the speed limits be reduced at the Route 16 Main Street and Route 16 intersection in East Hardwick. And I just want to reiterate, we did contact V-Trans about this prior. They actually took some steps to clear some limbs, so if you'd be heading south on the right-hand side of the road, so that the sight lines were improved. In addition, Aaron and the police department did request and research and get our crash data for that particular intersection. There were no serious accidents, nothing involving injuries. I forget the exact time period. I want to say 7 to 8 year period. Does that seem right, Aaron? It was. I think it was at least that. For sure. So the main point is that with that data, what V-Trans would do with that data, or what the data is showing, would indicate that V-Trans would not be taking action to move forward on a traffic study to reduce the speed limit. So that's the status. I just want to reiterate this. I know I had some questions from folks in the area this past week and a half or so, and that's the standing as of now. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware of this. We are getting things in order to do the sludge cleanout project for the wastewater lagoons. The board authorized moving forward on this at the last meeting, so we're being somewhat aggressive to get this done. The way the weather has been going lately with little rainfall and drier, it's very conducive to support the project, so we're moving forward. This is probably going to be a 6 to 7 or 8 week project in total, so we're trying to keep moving forward on this. We did last week, front end of last week, Public Works did complete a comprehensive flushing of the water system. We did have a handful of calls on this, but what I would say is, generally speaking, the procedure went well. And there were a few folks that were surprised, but I think all in all, we did a pretty decent job of getting the word out and just making sure folks were aware. We are on the water system, another topic. We're working on our 2019 Consumer Confidence Report. We're obligated to do this per the Safe Drinking Water Act standards and the State of Vermont standards. This will be going out in advance of July 1st. So it's just a report about our public water here for those that are on the system. Different project now, back to, this is Lamoille Valley Rail Trail project. We're keeping communications going into the Creamery Road project, which is from North Main to Slap Hill. We have communications with VAST. Summit Engineering is our engineers on this project, as well as V-Trans officials. And I would anticipate sometime in the next 2 to 3 week period, we're probably going to be having a bid release for this particular project, so that's good news. I know work is commencing on the bridges as of now, bridges 38 and 40, separately managed projects that are run by VAST. And The latest word we've got is in the state's budget, there are monies allocated that, when combined with federal funds, would potentially see the entire LVRT trail system completed over the next 2-year period. That's going to be a pretty significant economic factor for northern Vermont, but frankly for the entire state, so I see that as a pretty positive item. A reminder, and then I can cover the 2 other quick things. We have our Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day for Hardwick. It's Saturday, July 11th. Central Vermont Solid Waste Management District are the leaders on this project. Saturday the 11th from 9 to 1 p.m. at our highway garage, 155 Creamery Road. So what's listed on the website there, and we'll be advertising on this on our website as well as Front Porch Forum. Bring chemicals with the word hazard, danger warning, corrosive, toxic on the label. So, you know, anything that is hard to dispose of is the point. And it's there is a fee. It's $20 per car for residents. If businesses are interested in doing proper disposal, they are asked to call ahead. I'll give the number. It is 229-9383, extension 115. We'll get this information up on the town's website as well as Front Porch Forum so folks can access the link as well as the call-in information. Just real quick, back on the water and wastewater system, there'll be a select group of us, which will include select board members, town manager's office. Tom would be involved with this. Ken, our water operator, would be involved. We'll be reviewing our water and wastewater rate structure starting this next week, if I can pull the schedule together. What we're doing, of course, is on a yearly basis reviewing our revenue, reviewing our rates and projects, and determining what we're going to be doing for the rate schedule effective July 1, 2020 for the year ensuing. So that's in progress. If I could cover the sign issue.
Could I ask a couple questions first?
Absolutely.
Water flushing,
Yep.
am I correct in remembering that you guys were gonna try a slightly different pattern or something this year?
Yeah,
And did that work?
Yeah, what we ended up doing was the pattern actually didn't significantly change after we talked with our engineers, because the most recent 2 or 3 cycles of flushing had been done when the new Glenside Reservoir was online, so there was no significant adjustment in the process.
Okay.
So the crew did a good job of getting it accomplished. You know, we're going to be back at it here in the fall. We're going to try to get back on a schedule of doing this 2 times a year. You know, we'd been a year out because of the Bridgman Reservoir issue.
Yeah, right.
And we did have, as I said, we had a handful of calls. And you know, if at any time somebody has a concern, you know, they can reach out to us. If you happen to experience dirty or brown water, run the cold. It shouldn't take too long to clear it. You know, if it's a significant amount of time, more than a couple minutes, you can be in touch with us just to make sure we're aware. We want to ensure we're providing good product. It's not perfect. We know this. There's times when the ground will shift. There's time when there are hydraulic changes. And it's a natural occurrence in any public water system that at times you could see a little bit of cloudy water come. And particularly if you're doing a flushing procedure.
Right.
I just have a quick follow-up on that. Can you hear me with my thick masks?
Yeah.
So that, I was just wondering how, because we're kind of experiencing a drought, how the reservoirs are doing and how water in general is doing.
Yeah.
After the fire in East Hardwick, there was brown water, at least for the village houses. So it didn't last for very long, flushed out, totally natural. But I'm just kind of checking in how, hopefully it'll rain soon, but how the reservoirs are doing.
Yeah, we haven't at this point seen any information that would indicate we have any kind of a problem to be concerned about, but obviously if you start to go an extended period of time, you got to be paying attention. Tom may know the history, but a lot better than me. I mean, he's going to know the times we've had a more severe drought in this past 12 to 15 year cycle. I'm not aware of Hardwick having any issues because we have a pretty decent supply.
I mean, it's basically an underground river down there, and we've never had a problem down there. I mean, I think that when the guys do the well tests and stuff, I think when they kick the pumps on, I think no one drops down a foot and that's it. East Hardwick Village, talking to Doug up there, there's all kinds of water up there. There's so many springs up there, it feeds it. Actually, they kind of waste water up there because there's actually 2 overflows that run constantly up there out of the reservoir. So
I had also heard that after the fire, that all the fire trucks came and filled on School Street and Main Street there. So maybe that's why? Would that
Oh,
be why?
yeah,
they
yeah,
had
that's where
some-
we were filming the trucks up.
Yeah, so maybe that's why they had a little.
Oh,
bit-
yeah, but it didn't hurt it, it cleared it
Right.
right up, I mean, the water was nice and clear at the water.
Just point of clarification, the system that's being referenced, East Fire District, East Hardwick Fire District number 1, is a completely separately run, separate political entity from the town of Hardwick. But obviously, if we have a fire and that's the closest place to get some water, that's where it's going to occur. You know, for that particular incident, that was the best source, and that was a pretty significant fire that was faced up there. And Tom mentioned, you know, we only see a drawdown of about a foot, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but when we're doing these pumping tests, we're pulling out 550 gallons a minute, so it's very significant what we draw, and it's just showing that it's a strong aquifer. You know, it's a strong source. Anything else on the flushing or the water system issues?
I had just a comment on LVRT. I didn't go down today, but I did hear that the folks working on the bridge closest to the health center, which I can't remember if that's 38 or 40, but anyway,
Forgot.
the one closest, they were very close to being done and potentially could have been done today, depending on how it went.
Excellent.
So that's really cool.
Hey, I just had a quick question about that. So just after that bridge a little ways, is that hole is dug in the trail?
There is a hole dug in the trail.
What's this, because if that thing got filled in, the trail could be pretty usable pretty quick.
So,
What's the stuff in there?
yep, so, and yes, you're absolutely right, and this also occurred to me, and I sent an email out to, Ken Brown at VAT, who's, director of the LVRT at VAST, and also Joel Perigo, who's, at V-Trans, who is working on coordinating the whole trail build-out. And I said the same thing, I'm like, if we could just fill that in, when these two bridges are decked, we could get Hardwick to East Hardwick and even up to the bend.
Yeah,
At least on foot, then in the winter on snowmobile or whatever, but, so Ken is looking into the possibility, Joel at V-Trans said he doesn't have any budget or whatever to do that now.
what needs to be done? I mean, did it need
So,
culvert or it could just, oh, okay, so it's not
Yeah.
just to fill in the hole, okay.
no,
Just, there's a couple things too. Bear in mind, we're still trying to navigate and get information in order on the other section that the town is in control of, which is, we refer to it as the LVRT Improvement Project. That's the one that has the USDA grant. That's going from Slap Hill up. So there's an opportunity to make that improvement there. But what I recall from the email exchange is Ken from VAST was also investigating what can we get for temporary bridge spans for this particular gap.
Oh,
What he indicated is it is VAST intent to get this active for this winter's snow machine season, to do the connection.
Oh, okay.
but we don't actually have a plan. I also asked, I asked about a couple other things about.
Well, there's a lot of moving parts.
There are a lot of moving parts. It would be, yeah. The
Okay.
nicest thing would be if a 6-foot culvert fell out of the sky and dropped in there.
Yeah,
And
Might happen.
And we already have Will and Cody down there with excavators and stuff, and the dirt's all just sitting there on the edge of the trail, and when they dug it out, which, push it back in.
yeah.
I don't think there's ever a culvert there.
So what I was told from our engineering study is there's a stone box culvert under there.
To the left.
There's the cattle pass, that's
Right,
made
and
out of
that's where
railroad
the water
ties.
used to run.
But they said there's also a stone box culvert, like underneath where it's dug out, like the floor of that dugout is the top of a stone box, is what they said. And so their proposal is to not try to clean that out again, but just drop a 6-foot culvert on top of it.
No, 6 foot.
Well, I don't know, I made that up. It could, maybe it's not,
2-3 foot.
yeah, not the same.
I think a 2-foot culvert would take care of the water that's there.
Because it can flow through the cattle
Oh, yeah, yeah,
underpass too, so.
yeah, but there's not that much of a stream there that crosses.
Right, I thought they were having beaver problems, that's why they were, I heard that's why they did the
Yeah.
dig out, but,
We're off on a siding right
yeah,
now.
okay, sorry about hijacking that.
It's okay, no, it's all good. I had one other, water rates. So we are gonna do water, do we know who's participating in water rate discussions?
So what I did is, I threw notice out to those folks that were involved this last time around. So So select board members that were involved last year were Lucian and Eric. If any other select board members are interested in being involved, forgive me, I can't remember if I pushed this to the entire board 2 weeks back or not, but if anybody else is interested.
I'd be interested in having someone else do it if somebody else wanted to. And it occurs to me that all of us except Kaylee, I think, are on this water system. It might be interesting to have it outside, like somebody who doesn't actually, the rates aren't gonna affect you.
I rent anyway, so they really won't affect me.
Right.
So what I could do
I don't
for
know,
a next
just an
step is
idea.
just resend to include all the board members and throw some
Or
Did
dates
you
maybe
out.
just
else.
volunteer, Caitlin?
I did, but,
I'm
but
happy
if,
to take on that responsibility,
you are.
as long as
Beautiful.
I can learn from you and Lucian.
Oh, yeah. Nothing to it, really.
I get confused with numbers.
You do not.
I do.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Doesn't show.
I've been hiding it for a long time.
All right. So the water rate structure is an interesting thing, and there definitely is stuff to learn there and try to grapple with. It's a little similar to an electric rate structure, but it's just, yeah, it's an interesting thing. You have to cover your base costs, but there are variable costs as well. So it's,
I think this last round, bear in mind, we just had this new rate structure in for 3 years and, getting more meters put in. My observation is on last year's process.
1 year.
Well, meters in place for 3, new rate structure for 1, that's a correct
yeah.
statement. We did put together some tools to just try to help ourselves better understand the data we're looking at.
Right.
What are we getting for revenue? What do we anticipate for expenses? What are the trends, so that we have a tool that is showing it's equitable and we're covering our costs. I mean, that's our goal. Yeah, it's an enterprise fund. It's got to be run as a business. That's our intent.
all right, so
I'll resend to the full board. Is that what I heard? Or to just Kaylee at this point?
you could resend to the full board, and Lucian, are you still interested in following up
I'd
on
be
it?
happy to continue on with it. Yeah.
Is everybody good with
I'm good with you guys.
yeah, so target, Lucian and Kaylee with those. Yeah. All right, so I feel like I've asked so many questions that we've now dragged out the town manager report through half the meeting, but carry on.
So the last thing is, thanks to Ross for coming in and meeting with me this week. And let me just offer this. Obviously, it's a sensitive discussion time for the town, for the community, for the state, for the nation, frankly, for the world, on things we're facing in regards to the incident that was most recently sparked by George Floyd's death. And we have a lot of folks, and obviously we have a resolution tonight in regards to support of the Black Lives Matter movement. So let me just offer this. I did, as Ross explained, had some concerns on the sign that was put on the black suspension bridge prior, and the interpretation, and it wasn't just mine, and I expressed this to Ross. There were some folks that felt it was maybe pointing at individuals or businesses, and some folks were uncomfortable with that. So this being noted, took some action to remove the sign. That was my decision. I'll stand behind that particular move at that time. Looking back, was it the right thing to do or not? I can't say for sure. The next thing that came to be was that we had a Black Lives Matter flag, as well as some tombstones that appeared in the Memorial Park last Friday, right across the street here. And I know you get yourself in trouble if you are picking and choosing what you decide not to do in regards to a policy. But I just decided last Friday that the Black Lives Matter movement is obviously an important thing in history right now, and made the determination that at this time we can allow for that in the Memorial Park. And I recognize it's a double standard what I have just described to everybody. I get that. I think the way that we should go about this is to the best of our ability, and frankly, I need the select board to offer some commentary on this. My job is to, make sure that we're doing the right thing in regards to operations, I mean the town, and matching up with our ordinances and policies. And frankly, it's never perfect. That's what I would say, and I'm not perfect. So, we're working on this. It's a work in progress. This being said, I made the decision. This isn't about me, but I just want to offer a little bit so folks get where I'm coming from. I just felt if I made a decision on Friday to remove the memorial and the flag, the tombstones that are across the street, it really would have been the wrong thing to do at that time. It just didn't seem right to me. I felt differently about the flag that was on the black suspension bridge, and I've explained that. I felt it was good to be respectful and give this a little bit of time. This being said, I think we have to just do a barometer check and remind everybody what our policy and procedure is here in Hardwick. And I want the select board to be involved with this decision so you're comfortable with what I'm outlining, and then everybody in our community is comfortable with what we should be doing here in regards to this signage. It's unfortunately, this is a very serious issue. We're dealing with a pandemic, and now we're dealing with another society issue, so we've got two of the most contentious and hot button issues that we've faced in any of our lifetimes at the same time. So, what I'm trying to get across the table is I want to just make sure this is a respectful tactic, and can we somehow get this back to what we have for a policy and a procedure?
So I just want to read quickly from this policy just to set where this is coming from. And I think that we have, so in essence, we have some zoning regulations that state that temporary signs or banners advertising public or community events to be displayed on town property need the prior permission of the select board. So there's that, and then further, which is what throws Sean into kind of the ambiguous land of deciding, is unapproved signs placed in this area will be removed at the convenience of the town, which gives a lot of latitude.
I think this policy only refers to the intersection of Route 14 and 15, I
Yeah,
think.
that's.
So I think it actually doesn't really apply to any of the,
I disagree.
Being the only select board member who
Yeah.
actually signed this policy, I know that when it was developed, it was as a result of people putting a lot of signs as you turn.
And it would block
in the
vision.
sight lines of
Yeah.
that intersection.
Yep,
And then there was also, I think it was also around the same time that I think the chamber players decided to put their sign across Main Street from the swinging bridge to the,
oh,
remember that? And
Yeah.
it just didn't work.
Yeah.
And so I think that the intent was to be safer so that we weren't having all this stuff for people to read when they're in that bad intersection anyway.
right,
And then that one sign was a little low, and nobody had it never occurred to anyone that somebody would try to put a sign across Main Street. But the electric department did it, and so then that got moved, because it's always, after that, it was always on
Wilkins Street.
Claudia Bull's building
Oh,
instead.
yeah,
Because a lot of times that banner space is taken up, that is
Yeah.
where we kind of designated for that kind of a banner across the road. So I think, and this is specific to advertising public or community events. It's vague, but it's a different kind of thing. I think that we could tune this up a little.
Yeah.
But also, as I suggested before, we could create a sort of a place for this particular kind of situation.
Kaylee?
I also just wanted to add that I think Sherry adding the conversation to the resolution and the agenda is a really good idea. I think we're going to have a much fuller conversation about this at that time. But the gravestones, I don't see those as signs, they're really memorials. So that might be, this is pretty specific to advertising, pretty specific to signage. There's a gray area, obviously, with a guerrilla community art piece. Is that a sign? Is that not? But I think having essentially memorial stones in the memorial park is not a big stretch. And I think, Sean, that leaving those was a very thoughtful thing to do.
But Sherry, I read this to be specific to that one intersection.
Yeah, I
As
think it kind of
versus-
is.
That it
yeah.
was just this one
Yeah.
intersection. It
That's,
doesn't refer.
that's where we were having a problem.
To the
We were
entire
addressing
town.
a problem with this.
So,
policy.
but if you read the beginning of paragraph 2 here, I think right, so this it just references the zoning regulations.
Mhm.
But it's saying that it's not intended to conflict with or supersede zoning regulations
So what do those zoning regulations say?
that state that temporary signs are banned. I mean, we have to pull them to get the exact text, but what this policy says is that those regulations state that temporary signs or banners advertising public community events to be stated need the permission of the select board.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, that applies universally to town property, yeah.
That's what this says.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, whether that's true or not, we'd have to look at those articles, but
You
probably.
just read it back almost word for word what's listed in our bylaws.
Oh, so you got the bylaws there? Yeah.
Item E, it's highlighted.
Yeah.
You almost read it back word for word. I am interpreting it to mean all town property, not just that intersection by the Lincoln Way.
Right, yeah,
Makes
the-
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it does, yeah,
Either way, it makes sense to
Yep.
do what, for Tom to have done what he chose to do, and then also for us to make a more clear statement
yeah,
around it.
yeah. Okay, so we're going back to, we'll discuss that more at item 7.
I think so.
Okay. Excellent, moving along. Thank you, Sean. Any more questions for Sean?
Well, I just wanted to follow up on the sign thing again. So the sign on the bridge, I think at the time you removed it, you didn't realize about the newspaper article. That was
correct.
Yep.
And, but I think the newspaper article strongly implicated some certain people that wrote the article, put it up.
Yeah,
And did they reach out to you or did you reach out to them? Or?
nope, same with across the street. I mean, I know
Okay.
now from the article this week who was responsible for placing the monuments across the street, the banner across the street.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't contacted prior.
Okay, I was just curious.
Active permission.
For what it's worth, that banner is now I returned it to the police department, so if anybody wants to recover it, it's there. It's, to be recovered, no harm done, you can pick it up. If you want to try to post it again, then I know we'll talk about this further into the meeting, so
Yeah.
we'll see where we decide to go.
Okay, good. No, I just get curious about that.
A shout out to the Gazette for some reporting there that's helping.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom.
Thank you, Tom Fadden.
Keep going.
Okay, what have you guys been doing?
I've been on vacation, so.
Oh, do you want to tell us about that, or you want to tell us about the roads?
I was thinking about vacation. Oh, but anyways, yeah, this is my first week back. It's been a good one. Starting out with a fire on Monday, of course, so it didn't really work. But anyways, the guys, from my understanding, last week ended up grading 2 roads. I didn't ask them where or whatever, but I think it was up around Tucker Brook area that way. And they finished the work out on ditch work for like on Dusty Swamp, all the way down through Nichols Pond Road,
Yeah.
down through there.
Yeah, saw them working actually.
Yeah, they replaced the culvert up there that needed to be done. So that road is in good shape. Actually, most of our roads in good shape. I mean, they're starting to dry out now, but of course with this weather here, we really need some moisture in the ground there for the chloride to really work good right now. But this week, they're starting a project up in Cape Brook Road. So they're starting up on top and working their way down. So they started up at the town line, and Spencer said they're down to Helen Gates's property right now. So they're about halfway done that road right now. So hopefully we can finish that up next week and get that one done. I took Mike with me Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. We went up to East Hardwick and we got that catch basin up there all fixed and repaired. Next to the bridge, we got a little bit of a lip left there, but it's not a drop off anymore. We had a request while we were up there to see if we could scrape up some coal packs to go up on Belfry Road, because there's a few potholes up there. So we ended up fixing those up. I think they graded over Bunker and West Hill the other day. Got that area done. Today, me and Ed spent the majority of the day between him mowing and me doing a few water projects in town there for some water turns on and stuff. We had a problem down at the lift station on 14, so we pulled that pump out and got that one running again, but it's not too great, so we're gonna have to do something with the pump down there. I think the motor's gonna have to be rewound on that one, but there's still one good pump in there running, so we can use that one for backup if we have to. And then the majority of the afternoon, we spent pulling the pump out of the Buffalo lift station over there. And we got that one pulled out, replaced that motor in there with a new pump and stuff. The seal went on the old pump, which created water getting up into the wiring and stuff. So we got that one repaired this afternoon, so. That's it. So.
Cobb School and Nichols Pond were done, the ditching this last couple of weeks.
Yeah, within the next, I mean, we've been,
Those are done, I would say.
the upper part of Cobb School, we got Montgomery Road ditched, or the upper part of Montgomery Road ditched. We got Pumpkin Lane Road ditched this year. Trying to think, and then we went to Nichols, Dusty Swamp, and now the Tucker Brook. So the ditching's coming along real well, so.
I know we had a rocky start to our spring with the COVID thing and everything, but do we have plans to tackle any of our hydraulically connected segments this year with grant funding? Are we doing anything?
No,
Grant funding's on hold with the state of Vermont right now until we decide where this budget's gonna fall, so we can't proceed on any of
Right,
that.
because what we had done for that, me and Sean mostly, we ended up going after the grant there for Tucker Brook Road, so.
Oh, okay, so if it comes through, we were thinking Tucker Brook.
Yeah.
Well, even if it doesn't, maybe,
We're still thinking of
still
I see.
thinking maybe we'll,
Got it.
we'll go as far as money will stretch us to go.
Yeah.
I mean, while we're waiting for the crusher to come and stuff, hopefully here within the next couple months here, and, we might as well just keep on, grading,
Yeah.
and we'll have the guys just keep ditching. We'll just,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah.
Excellent.
Got it?
Questions? All right, thanks, Tom. Next up, Police Department report, Aaron Cochran. Give your department status.
I'll keep it relatively short because I'm on here several times tonight. I don't know
Yeah.
how I get to be so lucky, but as far as the public safety building, Roy Ainsworth and there's one other gentleman that are doing taxes up there again. And they're doing it outside, they have tables set up outside and so on. And so they do that, have done that, started this week, and they're doing it 3 times a week. I don't know, I think July, I don't remember when tax deadline is, July 15th, so they'll probably be doing it, up until then.
Is that a special program you do?
Yeah, they do it as it's normally AARP that they're doing it for, but AARP apparently hasn't authorized any of it to be done under them because of the COVID stuff. So they're actually doing it out of another organization to help seniors to get their taxes done and so on. So they do it every year normally in the building, but this year they're doing it outside the building. Luckily the weather's been nice. It really hasn't been an issue, but they have access to the restroom, that type of thing. But yeah, people are staying in their cars, while they're doing taxes, et cetera. They have like an intercom thing set up, and they got it to work. So for them, so it works for us. Let's see. Fuel company came today again on the building for an inspection, annual inspection for that, for tank heating stuff. That was done today. As Tom mentioned, there was a fire on Monday. We assisted with the investigation of that. Again, we're back to regular patrols, just wearing a mask when when they're interaction with an individual in a car stop, etc. But we're back to doing those, which is very unique because a lot of registration, inspection things, a lot of things have been postponed. So, but if somebody is 2 years out of an inspection, that was a little different than the COVID situation, so, or registration, or license, or et cetera, et cetera, so, so we're back doing that. VASA had spoken with me about doing, ATV patrols in Hardwick on their trails, and they would provide the equipment to do that. So I, signed an MOU with them to do that. We'll provide the manpower here and there on a weekend afternoon, et cetera, to go out and do some ATV patrols on their trails through Hardwick. And they're gonna provide the equipment, to us to be able to do that. And they'll reimburse, the officers, pay for that, so.
What
So we
would they
do
be
that.
patrolling for on that? Would they be,
What's that?
I just wonder what kind of things they'd be looking for on that, is it?
With ATV patrol, you're looking for, there is helmet law, you know, they do have to have a VASA, certificate. Again, we run into some of the, COVID stuff, you can't get a VASA trail pass, I guess it would be called, without a valid registration. So there's some things there. I've talked with, Fish and Game was also doing, you know, patrols as well, and, you know, there's obvious reasons if it can't be done because of the, you know, different state agencies that have shut down, et cetera, you know. We're all respectful of that. That's, you know, do what you can and you know, go from there. And education as well is big on, you know, on the ATV trails as well. So, and using the right designated trails, not trespassing on other people's land, et cetera. So, so a lot of it's a big education piece. Prior to this, we were really stuck to some type of an intersection on a highway, you know, with a cruiser to be able to really do anything, and it's not really all that effective. So, this will make it much more effective and be able to get us out there and be able to offer a little more education on, you know, some safety aspects and so on, and landowner respect, et cetera.
You got blue lights on ATV? Or?
There will be, yeah,
There will be, okay.
yeah. They have one already marked as a safety patrol, and we do have to put a blue light on it, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It'd be pretty surprising, I bet, the first few people.
I'm sure, yeah. Well, maybe, maybe not. I mean, they've been doing, you know, Fish and Wildlife has had a contract to do with this, so they've been doing it for different areas, but obviously they're spread pretty thin as well. Some of the sheriff's departments have done some of those, but some don't want to do them, so some don't have the manpower to do them. So it's not something we're doing on a regular basis. It would be an occasional afternoon and to go out and do that. And let's see, we're hoping to pick back up on more training, as everything has been shut down and we're halfway through the year and have to have our annual credits by the end of the year. So we've got half the time to get it all done. So we hope to soon start picking up on some of the annual trainings we have to do. Do have some new personnel perspective, and I'm just going to leave that to the later, the later one, as far as the talk goes. Somewhere down the line, I'm in there again, so.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it for that. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Sure.
Next, we have a Hardwick Electric report by Mike Sullivan, who I believe has joined us on Zoom. Mike, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you. Come.
Okay. So, Eric, you are the only voice I can hear at all. Everybody else is 100% underwater. So.
Yeah. Maybe they're cooler than I am then.
What's that?
That makes them cooler if they're underwater.
Yes, I'm jealous.
Yes.
Okay. So, I'm going to start with COVID-19 efforts and compliance, which we are all up to date. VEPSA is carrying a weekly effort for all VEPSA members, and we've been compliant with everything that's come out of the state. We're looking to reopen mid-next month, and our major concern and leftover from the pandemic is that we have some quite a few customers with some hefty balances, roughly about 200% of what we normally run April, May, June annually to what we did this year. 200% of the number of customers. Not too bad on the money. It's about $50,000 to $70,000 more than normal during those times. So we do have some concerns brewing about all that because some customers routinely will move and leave their landlord with their bill, which are getting pretty large. So hopefully that doesn't happen. We'll keep you posted. We'll keep the community posted. We're sending out some stuff to customers first thing next week, just advising them where they're at, and, where their balances are. You know, we're here to help them and work out plans and all that stuff that, you know, we want to do to help them. But I do have some concerns that the numbers are getting big and people aren't taken care of. So I'll just share that for data. Woken Hydro has been cranking right along this spring, way over budget, 13 to 17% over budget. Unfortunately, we developed a problem with the hydraulic system that runs the gates and blades, which affect how much water goes through the unit, how much power the unit makes from the water coming through those blades. Timing-wise, couldn't have been much better because we were scheduled for a shutdown for annual maintenance anyway. And what could have been a $100,000 repair turned out to be very minimal. We found a stripped operating shaft that's slipping through a guide nut, so that's going to be an easy fix. Pretty happy about that. We should be back online in the next probably 4 or 5 weeks. So revenues, our most recent revenues to date were about $58,000 over budget, or 2%, and our expenses are about $150,000 under budget, or about 8%. So numbers that way, budget-wise, overall, look very good. Purchase power costs are running 7% under budget, and our coverage ratio is at 101%. And those costs are about 65% of our entire budget. So those are really critical, and being 7% under is fantastic. I did want to crack an egg with all of you, Sean, you too, on the Yellow Barn project. We had a site meeting there with the design crew as well as some guys from Jasper that went fantastic on end of January, last week of January. And since then, we've never heard a thing. They were supposed to work up a plan and run it by us based on the discussions and the meeting we had. And I got an email Monday of this week saying, hey, where's our estimate? And I said, hey, where's the plan you were supposed to get us? I can't give you an estimate on no plan. So I don't know where that's all at, but I just wanted you aware that if they're saying we owe them some numbers, they owe us a bunch of data before we can calculate any numbers. So I just put that on your radar.
That's helpful to know, Mike. Thank you.
Okay. Our ongoing projects, the main ones are we've shifted our system upgrades on the distribution system down to the last sections of the low voltage distribution that we have left in the Woodbury area. And that work is about half done. When it is done, we'll be completely eradicated of that low voltage system and benefiting from all those improved system losses that I've mentioned on several occasions. Customer work has been dead as a doornail, but in the last 2 to 3 weeks, it's picked up. We have probably a dozen jobs that have come in the last 8 to 10 days. And we also are trying to finish up our 3319, the transmission line that serves all HEB customers. I committed in our integrated resource plan with the state to rebuild that entire line, 10% a year over the next 10 years. And as it turned out with COVID, since we had no customer work to do. It was perfect. The time of year was perfect. That we've gone in, we've actually rebuilt about 65% of the entire line. And the right-of-way is a full 100-foot transmission right-of-way that's never been prudently maintained by Hardwick Electric, and it's what I would say is probably 30 years. So we have 2 sets of veg management crews in there, one with a brontosaurus, which is a great big tree shredder on an excavator, and then guys coming behind him that are climbers, they go up and cut down the biggest trees. So we're reclaiming the full 100-foot right-of-way, and with the new line and the right-of-way fully cleared, we should have no problems on that line for many years to come. We had 2 events on that line in the last 2 years that really hurt us and hurt our service quality and reliability performance numbers. So that's why it was such a target in the IRP, and I'm just ecstatic that we had an opportunity of some kind of null time from regular work that let us get way ahead on that one. That's good for everybody. What else do we got here?
Eight.
That's probably enough. I'll open up to questions.
H11 project?
Oh yeah, sorry, that should have been on my list. H11 is, we have two documents left to execute with the developer. One of them is the interconnection agreement, which basically specifies all the work we're gonna do to get power to them and all the work they're gonna do to get power to us. Kind of a generic thing, but definitely needs to be signed off on. And we have to give them an access easement to go from the last pole of the interconnection to their transformers and equipment. So 2 very trivial things left, nothing to argue about. We just got to basically process them and sign them. And we'll be looking to break ground here, I would say, in the next 6 to 7 weeks. So that's going very, very well and well ahead of schedule.
Eric, do you mind asking a question for me? Could you ask about if the...
Yeah, I could hear it.
Oh, can you hear me?
You can hear Kaylee?
I can hear somebody talking, but I can't hear what
I'll repeat the question. Go ahead, Kaylee.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if the electric board has talked about any kind of relief for those bills in light of COVID, and especially if the budget is looking so, I don't know when the fiscal year ends.
Rosy.
Sorry?
If the budget's looking rosy.
Yes, if there's a plan for that or if it's been talked about.
So Kaylee's wondering if the electric department has talked about a plan for relief for folks who may be behind on their electric bills due to the COVID situation, especially she notes in light of the rosy sounding revenue and expense figures.
So what do you mean specifically by a relief?
So I just know there's
Relief.
like there's some companies who are giving either they're relieving late fees,
Yeah.
or they are allowing them to collect up to a certain, like they're extending the time that they can collect before they're called up for delinquency, or there are some companies that are even like taking 20% off or fully relieving some bills. I'm just wondering if it's a conversation that they've been having.
So she's just wondering if the electric department has had any conversations around relief for people who are behind on their bills due to COVID, and she's citing that other companies have done things like waiving late fees or extending due dates for people who are in trouble, or even offering a discount on bills. Wondering if that's been discussed at all.
Yeah, okay, so the only late fee or anything of that sort that Hardwick Electric has is a 1% interest fee on an outstanding balance, so it's pretty minimal. And under the existing rules and procedures under our regulators, we always routinely work with customers to set up repayment plans. We extend those repayment plans over up to 12 months. There's all kinds of provisions that presently exist, and yes, there are more we're looking at implementing at the behest of our regulators during this event. But yeah, there's a lot out there to help people, definitely, no question about it.
Does that answer your question, Kaylee?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mike while we have him? All right, hearing none, thank you very much for the update.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks,
All right.
Mike.
Next up is, we're finally to item number 1, which is Jody Lou Smith is here from the Judavine Library Board of Trustees, and to talk about the expansion project.
I'm gonna recuse myself.
Yeah, and Lucian's recusing himself because he's related to the library.
Little library. Okay, so last time we were here was February, and we were here as part of a public process for applying for a larger grant through the Vermont Community Development Program. We already had an application in for the USDA Rural Development. Both of those were very big processes that took a long time. We had hoped to hear about those grants. So at that time we were here in February, we talked about a timeline in which we expected to hear about those grants in March and April. And then, assuming we got favorable news, we were hoping to go to bond in June. So COVID put everything on hold. But essentially has started to release now, and we have not official but unofficial word that we have received both of these grants.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so
Congratulations.
thank you. One is USDA is $157,000. They have received the money from the government, which was one of their holdups. We were their top priority for special funding. The other one, BCDP. We are hoping to hear by the end of this week, but it might be next week. But I spoke to our contact there who said, go ahead, you're going. We wouldn't hold anything up.
And how much was that?
That one's for $100,000. So what this means is we are within spitting distance of meeting our fundraising goal. We have about $71,000 left to raise, for which we're doing a big mailing in the next 2 weeks. And, you know, we can't do in-person visits or anything of that, but we can do mailings. We'll continue fundraising. But we explained when we were here in February that it was our hope to do our bond in the summer, in part because that gave us time. Well, it met a requirement for the BCDP process to get started right away. But also, for the own interest of the library and the town, doing the bond in the summer gave us time to then finalize our plans and go to construction bidding in the fall, which is the time when we would expect to get the most bids and hopefully get the best pricing on this big job. So, you know, economic times are uncertain. There is no guarantee that the bond will be supported. We understand that, but we do feel like it would potentially save the town and the library money to get more bids and be on this schedule. And we feel like the time, and then the other piece of it is that we realized that it was already, the town was already holding a vote for the library. And so that's this, getting on this, because you're not meeting in July, that's why we needed to come so soon. We have to post that warning by July 10th. So this was.
So if, can you help me with a timeline? So
Yeah.
if we warned the bond vote for August 11th,
Yep.
and you got a successful bond vote, then you would still try to go out to bid this fall?
Yep. Yep.
For
We would-
construction starting when?
Next spring.
Next
our VCDP requirement for breaking ground by demolishing the senior center this year, assuming the bond is successful. We've done a fair amount of research into that process. We were directed by the state preservation contact person to look into deconstruction as a more environmentally friendly process. But we did look into that, and it's not really a fit for that building. It would be roughly 3 to 4 times the cost, because, in part because there's not much value of any, like, pretty much everything in that building is at the end of its useful life. There might be some interior beauties and things, but it's hard to tell. No one can tell us what that value is, and there's a lot of extra labor because the site is so small. And so they'd have to move everything somewhere else to sort it. And it doesn't. One place said they couldn't do it at all, and one said it would be $35,000. We still have to take out the asbestos, and that's a separate cost, but that's fixed however we take out the building. But a straight demolishing the building is about $11,000.
So,
Do you need a motion?
so I have more questions.
Oh.
So, I'm just thinking about, like in a grand scheme, we've been starting to hear from residents who are struggling financially and wondering about, what we could do. And so, and in, looking at the town operations, there's been talk about, maybe holding on hiring the new position we had slated for an economic development person. We've talked about, do we really need to pave everything we had scheduled this year? If we could drop what we spend, then we've been given the legislature has given us the ability this year to reduce tax rates if we can reduce our spending. So anyway, in that setting, we're now talking about posting for a library bond for $550,000. The next item is a fire truck bond for $275,000, I think. And so I again have a question on timing, and that is bond vote in August, go out to bid for construction spring of 2021. When's the first payment on that bond?
It's a while, because we will have raised 2/3.
Yeah.
So we would spend that first.
Yeah.
We're asking the bond vote to approve the maximum we expect to need, but we're hoping we don't need all that much. And we also would, even when we do go into that money, we would do a temporary loan first, construction loan essentially. Construction loan. And we wouldn't finalize, and we might go through the USDA. We've talked about that if they gave us comparable rates. The rates are very low now, but we wouldn't be paying on that. I mean, what would you say, Sean? If we didn't really spend that money until the end of 2021?
I think it's some time of year when you are considered punch list is closed, when the project closes out, that's when you get into the details of your final bond package. It's like our other projects.
Right, and I recall we've got other bonds where you get the bond and it seems like it's almost a year till your first payment, even after, right?
Yeah, assuming the construction takes a year, that's accurate.
But even for fire trucks and stuff. I think.
It's usually a year.
Like this year, you get the truck the following year, the bond payment doesn't come exist until the following year after that, so 2022 will be your first payment.
So this is why I wanted to just talk this through, because assuming, and it's maybe not a valid assumption, but assuming that the COVID-19 thing passes and we're through it sometime in 2021 and people are in better shape if we don't start making these bond payments till 2022, maybe that all works out. I don't know.
I think it would safely be 2022. Because we would probably not be finalizing the bond till the end of 2021.
Can I add a timing thing too?
Yeah.
I think two, so if we're thinking big picture bond payment wouldn't be until 2022, it sounds like. Not knowing what the future of our economy is, right now, this year might be the best time to do it. So that way the project can get started, not knowing what the economic impact of this will be in 2 or 3 or 5 years. This might be a kind of a window into a lot of these projects, just because there's so much unknown. So and there's also the borrowing is really pretty good right now too. So I'm just thinking about the long term. We have no idea. We don't know how to predict it, but if we can, it seems
Yeah.
sort of like a window for the project.
There's also potential for it to be an economic boost, you know, it's a good-sized project. I assume there'll be jobs over a long window.
And this is also just putting it up to vote, correct? This is us approving that there can be a vote by the town.
That is correct, absolutely.
So we're not deciding if this
We are
project
not.
is moving forward or not.
We're deciding whether we set it up for a vote. Yep. Yeah, I'm ready.
So I will make the motion that we, I'm not sure how to word it.
I think-
Do the warrant for.
No, we have a resolution in our packet, I believe.
Okay.
Where is it? I saw it. Warning. There's a warning. So we would have to adopt the warning to warn the voters of Hardwick. Do you want me? I could read the thing.
Yeah, I'll read it for Casey, but I'm happy to.
So it's just a warning that there'd be a vote. The details would be in the warning, but that it would be on August 11th. And the article on the warning, the article we'd be voting on is shall general obligation bonds or notes in the amount not to exceed $550,000, subject to reduction by the application of federal and state grants and aid, contributions, and reserve funds for the purposes of constructing and equipping in addition to the Judavine Memorial Library, the estimated cost of such improvements being $550,000. Oh, sorry.
That's incorrect.
Being, yeah, we have a little typo here. Estimated cost being $1,900,600, sorry, $965,865.
Should be 1.69.
Oh, this is 1.96.
Say 1.69.
So we have, yeah, let's rework this a little bit. 1.69. 865. All right, and
But
so
that's the whole project cost versus.
Correct.
The bond amount is 550,000.
correct. So let me just reread, having stumbled through it, the last little bit there. The estimated cost of such improvements being $1,698,865.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion amongst the board about?
I have a general voting question, but that can wait.
Oh, all right.
It's
Maybe
nothing to do with the library.
Okay.
Well, can I offer something?
Yeah, sure.
This is gonna be, we're doing a mail vote
that
process
was
for
my
the
question.
primary. This is gonna be a mail vote system for this, and depending on what happens with the fire truck,
Yeah.
people are gonna receive this in the mail. There is no in-person voting for the primary. We're
Okay.
mailing to everybody this year if you're on the voter checklist.
And is that, so the process is similar to absentee voting,
That's correct statement.
except we can
Per,
all,
let me clarify, per the Secretary of State's office and what the state of
Yeah.
Vermont has said we need to do.
this is what we're doing.
Yes.
So, okay, so I'm just curious to see how that'll affect voter participation, actually. I wonder if that makes it go up or down.
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. All right, so motion on the table is to approve the warning for the Judavine Memorial Library bond. Any more discussion?
Information meeting.
Oh, we need informational meeting?
There, yes. There is an informational meeting on this.
Further notified. Oh yeah, informational meeting on August 6th. Sorry, I didn't read the whole thing aloud. Information and, yeah. So we'll have an informational meeting on the 6th, right before the vote.
And I bet they'll put out lots of information and helping people understand the amount
Yeah.
for the bond vote. And congratulations on all the grants that
The
you've
grants, yeah, that's great.
secured and all of the fundraising that you've been successful at. That's amazing.
Close, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
getting close.
USDA is a big deal. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, so all in favor of warning this, the bond vote, please say aye.
Aye.
Does everybody said aye, except Lucian who's abstaining. All right, and do you have a copy of that you want us to sign?
I want to.
Oh, we're gonna rework it and we'll sign it later.
Yeah, I
Got it.
didn't get it from, it was sent to us, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jody.
Yes, thanks, you guys.
Next up is the fire truck, actually, I went through all my, hesitations and, timing things already, so. Somebody wanna talk about the fire truck? Tom, what kind of truck is it?
You mean the new one?
Well, the
What
one
would it be, or
the one you're bonding for, what are you getting rid of and what are you buying?
getting rid of a 26-year-old truck that does not hold water anymore, so we don't really use it unless we use it for town work, which we have been,
Yeah,
flushing out college and stuff. That truck will be replaced by what they call a mini pumper. Be a little bit shorter truck, still a 5-man cab, still 1,500 gallon minute pump, 400 gallons of water, regular stuff, the hoses, everything you can think of. And why it costs that much, I still ain't figured that out yet, but. So, well, the chassis itself, like I said back in February, the chassis itself, you could go out and buy a 4-door chassis, for what, probably 60 grand, 65,000. Then the rest is just square body and a pump and,
yeah, that's the other 200.
yeah, which
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. So,
Yeah.
it's just because it's a fire truck and it's red and,
And they know that municipalities are voting on it.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess.
It's not coming out of anybody's pocket directly. Does anybody have questions for Tom or want to make a motion on this one?
I just have a question about, sorry.
No?
The motorcycle threw me off. So this is really a question about the mailings. So, the warnings, I assume, are going to be changed to a mailing, not showing up at the town offices. And then are both bonds showing up together? Is it like a mailing and then you check off what you're voting for? Is that?
So these warnings are just for posting. So
Okay.
these will get posted, and then, if you look in your shared folder, there's a packet of about 7 pages, so there's an actual, like, voter page for each bond.
Okay, I missed that.
It will
Thank you.
say that that article
I did see
one.
that. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
it'll have one for the fire truck, one for the library,
Okay.
it'll pass.
It'll all come in one packet.
Correct. Okay. It'll be
Just
a-
like if you went in
a-
person.
Almost like a separate ballot for each one,
Yeah.
yes or no.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
So I'll just read this. So again, this is a vote scheduled for August the 11th, 2020. Has one article, shall general obligation bonds or notes in an amount not to exceed $275,000, subject to reduction by the application of federal and state grants and aid and reserve funds for the purpose of acquiring a replacement fire truck, the estimated cost of such improvements being $275,000. And legal voters and informational meeting also August 6th. Okay. Questions, discussion? All in favor of warning this bond vote for the fire truck, please say aye. Aye. Is everybody, any nays, any opposed? All right, motion carries.
And that should be the last bond vote ever for a truck.
What do you mean ever?
We
Well,
started the capital
started
fund.
the capital
Oh, that's
fund
right.
To try to, yeah.
Oh, that was a really good idea. Yeah. Thank you, Tom, for reminding, that's a great, yeah.
Can we add that to the pamphlet?
To the
Oh, the information session, we can add it. All right, awesome. Next up, Item 3 is Police Department current practices, procedures on unbiased policing to include some discussion in cooperation with Greensboro contacts. I don't know if anyone joined us on Zoom. It doesn't look like it. I don't know if everybody on the board got copied with their email about Aaron, I think, had gone to a select board meeting in Greensboro and had a discussion, and I kind of thought somebody was maybe gonna join us here from Greensboro, but that was it. But apparently, here we are.
I can give you a rundown as to what they were thinking or what my impression was they were thinking, so.
Okay. Okay, so I saw it, and maybe it didn't say somebody was coming, maybe I just inferred that from what was written. Maybe it wasn't actually what was written.
Our understanding was, next step was just that the select board discuss and Aaron present some information coming off the Greensboro meeting, so that obviously we provide a police service contract to Greensboro, so on this particular issue, if the citizens of Greensboro wanted to learn more about, HPD and their policies and procedures, there'd be a forum for that moving forward. That's it in a nutshell.
Oh, so we're planning for a forum.
So kind of just information.
Got it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It'd be a forum for residents to ask questions.
Like a community forum.
Yeah, when they had talked about it, last Wednesday, I think it was, that I had suggested that we did it all as one.
Yeah.
Rather than have two separate or whatever, just have it all and work together to come up with a time. And way to do it. So that can be difficult too right now. So I kind of suggested that we do it together.
I think it's a good idea.
To save time.
Because the communities are, I feel we're close communities, like to each other, and when we share the police department, and so it makes sense, right?
I'd rather go to one than two.
Well, everybody can hear the same thing that way too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of the benefits of the virtual, I imagine it would be virtual, and so anyone could access that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Peter Romans, who's the chair for Greensboro Select Board, just had emailed me last week, and what he said as a closing, I'll just read it back. Group of Greensboro's residents petitioned the Greensboro Select Board requesting a discussion with Hardwick Police Department on current practices, procedures, etc. One of the other Select Board members spoke with Aaron about this at the Greensboro Select Board meeting. Aaron indicated that it was a reasonable idea and might include Hardwick residents also. And then, as Aaron's going to talk about, we're talking about now, what's noted here is towns administrators organize just some type of a remote meeting. So we just want to make sure we talked about it in this setting, and then we can be taking some steps to get something in the works. That's it in a nutshell.
So I think a community forum is a great idea, because I think a lot of us might be, myself included, might be somewhat ignorant of how policies governing Vermont police departments may differ from other places that we read about frequently these days. And it'd be great to talk about that. It'd be great to hear directly from our police chief and police, and others if you want to bring.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of fear out there, certainly of, they're seeing a lot on the news from much larger police departments, much larger metropolitan areas than what Vermont is, and what the tragedy that happened is not a tragedy that has happened in Vermont, thankfully. And in fact, and Lucian actually has some questions, so I'm gonna that I think are good questions that help dispel some of the maybe misinformation or just the not knowing of how really Vermont's police departments work. We're all actually very similar, whether it's here or whether it's Montpelier or wherever in the state. We're actually all trained the same academy. Many of our policies are the same because the league is the big really insurer of most of these small towns. I think there's only like 3 or 4 towns in Vermont that aren't under the league. They actually hire a police policy expert who is a retired, I can't remember if he was a lieutenant captain in Rhode Island, and is also now an attorney that actually writes the policies for the league to put out to departments, and most departments, they're good policies, so.
Aaron, when you say the league, you're referring to the League of Cities and Towns?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sherry,
I
you had a
think it would
question?
also be kind of good to include, just to either talk about or have representatives from AWARE and the other community organizations that the police department works with regularly, to help people understand what those relationships are and how they're good for us, you know. I don't know that everyone understands that.
Lucian, did you, Aaron alluded to some questions, did you want to have a discussion?
Yeah, well, so I emailed Aaron a bunch of questions, and he emailed me back some answers, and so, I mean, I guess it makes sense to go over them now, and then people have other questions at the.
I think so, I mean, if you have questions and.
Okay.
it was-
Well,
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
yeah, no, putting you on the spot, I guess, too. I can take it a little. Yeah, so I just was wondering, you know, I have a list of questions, and one of them was if no-knock warrants are legal here, and under what circumstances, if they are.
Sorry, can you say it again, because you're a little muffled.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So I was wondering if no-knock warrants are legal here, and obviously that's referencing
Oh, no knock.
no-knock warrants, yeah.
Yeah, it's called a no-knock warrant. They are legal here. They're usually only considered in extreme safety cases. And what a no-knock warrant means is that you would obtain a warrant for, say, a residence or a business or a building, so to speak. You would obtain a warrant to search that without having to knock first and announce yourself. That's a no-knock warrant. So in cases where you know, safety would be a factor of where you don't have time to allow somebody to prepare to essentially shoot back at you, or, you know, shoot at you, it's whatever.
So how common are these?
Not very, I've never seen one, so, in 17 years. But
They are legal.
they claim they can be obtained, I don't know, I've never got one, so, but I think probably every state has no-knock warrants, I would assume, but.
So I guess I was also wondering what's the process for holding an officer accountable if something does happen that, well, something that people object to, or
Right.
that is, you know, downright, you know, like.
So, as far as holding an officer accountable, it's been addressed over the past, probably the most over the past 10 years than it has over the past 20 years. And many of us pushed for reform in that area I think there's a question a little further down, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but if you hired an officer that left another agency and they resigned, so there was no information out there and you weren't able to get information, and so this was essentially there were some bad apples, so to speak, and
it would circulate from department.
It would circulate from department to department, and you couldn't get information. And so that was one of the reforms that actually happened over the past several years. And now information has to be reported to the Criminal Justice Training Council. They actually can review the reasons for letting an officer go, and they can determine whether or not to take steps to decertify that particular officer so that they would not be able to work in Vermont, depending on the circumstances and whatever. That's on the training council themselves and on their committees. But that's something new. Well, I say new, it's been probably maybe 5 years or so anyways, but that we were able to get some reform in that area there. That reform also happened with teachers as well. So there was, you know, obviously we know of some cases with teachers, and so that reform happened with them, happened with us. So many professions have looked at, you know, reform in those areas. As far as any type of, if there was, if there was a criminal activity, if there was a, say, a use of force, that could be, actually charged as a criminal offense, potentially, then an outside agency, actually investigates that. It's not investigated internally. Everything is handed over to an outside, agency,
Who's it handed over to?
whoever will do it. Generally, we try with the Bureau, the state police detectives, the Bureau, BCI is what it's called, Bureau of Criminal Investigation, for any type of criminal, activity. Generally, it gets handed to the Attorney General's office for prosecution because obviously, you work with state's attorneys on a regular basis and so on. So, so that process is all, in effect as to how. As far as internal policy violations, legislature actually mandated that each department have a designated internal investigator and that internal investigator receive training for investigations. So a policy violation that doesn't rise to a criminal level would be investigated by an internal investigator, and then that would be handed up the chain to the chief of police. Chief of police then determines what action should be taken, if any, depending on what the violation was. And if it's an extreme violation, the training council is also notified of that. The training council has the ability to take action over and above what the chief of police chooses to do. So, so there's a much better checks and balances system now than there has been, say, 20 years ago. I think all of our professions have evolved, and we've learned from them. So, so there's a pretty extensive checks and balances in there for that. So,
Is it working? Have you seen any situations where somebody was let go from Department A and the cause was made available and Department B did not hire that person because they figured out this is not a good hire?
yeah, I don't know if, I can't honestly say that I have seen anything for difference because it's not something that happens often. So it's not, say, 25% of the population out there are bad. It's an occasional, and so you might not necessarily hear of that situation. So we do a fairly extensive, when we do like background checks for hiring an officer, we do an extensive background check. They have to pass the entrance testing to the police academy. They have to go through an MMPI, which is it's a psychological profile exam. 500 questions. There's probably 50 questions, but they're asked 450 different ways through the test, and so they have to go through that, and we get a profiling on that, and then we get then they actually have to go through a polygraph as well. So we get the polygraph results as well. So you're really digging into the either past work history or just past history of that person and how they've come to this point. So it's pretty extensive now, and which is good because it helps you get good employees, but it also takes a lot of time to get to the end result. So
I went to the, I forget what it's called, but the police academy. What was it, the center for, I forget what you called it, basically the training association that is referred
to the Criminal Justice Training Council?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have a list of officers who have been, I think, decertified.
Okay.
Right online there.
I actually haven't looked at that, so you're ahead of me on that one.
And basically, pretty much all of them are for somebody who committed a felony while they were
Okay.
there. And then, well, I'd say half for that, and then half are for people who just didn't do the training.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there's like one insubordination.
Yeah.
So, but then they have another list that, I mean, a felony to me seems like, I mean, hopefully somebody's not a police officer if they're anywhere near a felony, really.
Right.
But then they have another list of officers, it's actually a shorter list, where something was referred to them, and then it gives like, it doesn't give any names or anything, but just says they were referred and the action that was taken, and most of the time the officer resigned.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's what I was wondering, is if you have access, the public doesn't have access to that, but when you're hiring somebody, do you have access to that list of people who've been reported as a problem and resigned from another agency?
Yes, I believe so. I haven't encountered it because we haven't had anybody apply that really has been certified already somewhere else, so it's been a while since we've had anybody in that, so I haven't had to access that.
Okay, so that is only if people are applying who aren't already certified.
Right,
But if
because
you're hiring
we're not
some-
gonna be looking into it unless they've applied, right,
Right.
yeah. And they would have to be already a police officer in order to fall under that certification issue, so.
Right, so if somebody was certified from another agency and then they had a problem and they were reported to this, and then they resign and come to you,
Then we can see that information is my understanding.
then you can see
Yeah.
that, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, I guess there's the use of force policy. I guess there are different, so you said you get it from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you've adopted the latest one. that they
Yeah,
recommend.
yeah, so use of force policy. And so there's some misconceptions about policy and training. They're actually two different things. So the policy has a continuum level of force, and that's what your policy dictates, is when force can be used. And force can be verbal commands, it can go to hands, hands-on and control moves is what they're called. So that's in the training as to how to do those, and the policy tells you what level of training is acceptable, basically. And the important thing to remember at this point is you can have a quick escalation of force and a quick de-escalation of force, and you have to be able to work within those split-second decisions. Somebody can make certain moves towards an officer that they know is a move of force towards the officer, but then they may back off. There's just different things there that you certainly have to. There's escalation and de-escalation, and those are all split seconds, and the officer is making those split-second decisions. So he doesn't always have. He knows what the policy is because it's the training that reflects that in the policy. And yeah, our policies, because the league is really good, actually. They've hired Trevor Whipple, who's a retired South Burlington chief, was chief for years in Vermont, and he's a liaison with the chiefs for the league. And so all the policies come out, he keeps us all updated on an email chain of different policies and things that really are of interest to us in the law enforcement world and the community.
So, I don't know if this will be in your list of questions, but in addition to training on use of force, and you talked about escalating and de-escalating, is there training on de-escalating situations?
Yes.
Yeah.
We do de-escalation training. Use of force training and training on the most current policy is actually annual as well. So we do that annually. So it's not something that you do, 20 years ago and then supposed to remember everything, for the next 20 years.
You're going to talk about that in the context of the rural setting that you're working in.
So, in a rural setting, what I've learned here over the many years is, and I'm a talker anyway, so, de-escalation, a lot of de-escalation is learning how to talk to people. It's not always easy. I've been called many, many names. I've been spit on. It's pretty unbearable, to be totally honest with you, as a person, to be treated the way that we're treated at times. And, you have to learn, especially in a rural area where your closest backup, you're alone, and your closest backup is at a minimum a half an hour away at times, if not more. You learn to talk. And so use of force is really not a common thing in a lot of, you know, our more rural areas, us included, because of learning to talk and learning to de-escalate, and that's a lot of de-escalation training. I sometimes say that a salesman makes a good cop because they can talk their way out of a lot of stuff, you know, and de-escalate a situation. So, you know, as a joke, but yeah, a lot of that is de-escalation, and so use of force is not always necessary, and actually very seldom is necessary.
And I've seen that, by the way. I've been on scene at the Hardwick PD with rescue quite a bit, and I've seen de-escalation.
Yeah, I have a video, actually. I dealt with somebody last week, I think it was. I think you'd be appalled at how I was talked to by this 18-year-old individual. It was pretty bad, but I spent a half an hour, and when I got done, he shook my hand, and laughed, but that was the result, so.
That's a good situation. I guess the other thing I was wondering specifically because of the George Floyd thing, like in some ways I feel like there's a lot of focus sometimes on specific incidents. And in some ways I feel like what happens, you know, on those videos is sort of a symptom of a very much larger problem. So in some ways I hesitate to get too into the details of things, and also Monday morning quarterbacking can be a thing, but at the same time, with George Floyd, that the officer was on his neck for however many minutes it was. And so I was wondering specifically, is that move one that is legal for cops to do in Vermont or sanctioned? Or
right.
How does that?
So that's not even taught in Vermont. I've never seen that particular move that was on that particular video. So that's nothing we're taught in Vermont. We're not taught. That's really a lethal move. And I don't know, can't speak about their training there. I'm not involved in it there, but it's not a move. That's nothing that, we're not trained in chokeholds or anything like that in Vermont. That's not what we do. Any type of neck move would be what's considered a red zone in your training, and that's a lethal move. That's known to be a lethal area, anything to do with the neck. So we're not trained in any type of lethal maneuvers, you know, neck maneuvers or anything like that. It's not part of our training.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's an important point to remember that our training, when it comes to use of force, is to use the least amount of force necessary. And that's exactly how we're trained, and that's ingrained in our mind from day one at the police academy, is that you are to use the least amount of force necessary to effect an arrest. So sometimes that's conversation, sometimes it has to go beyond that for the safety of all involved. But yeah, that's exactly how we're trained, is to use the least amount of force necessary.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. I guess the other thing I was wondering about, people are talking about, abolishing police, defunding police and all that, and which sounded like a crazy idea to me. I didn't know what they're talking about. When I looked into it a little bit, sometimes they were, people are actually saying things that I've heard other officers say, which is, we're spread too thin. Maybe someone else could do some of these things that we're doing. I've heard a couple officers say that before, before this, years ago. And so I asked you, and you it sounded like you were kind of treating the officers are spread pretty thin with all the different things they're expected to do.
Right.
So,
police in general, as far as you had asked if my feeling was that police are spread too thin, and the absolute question is yes. Over my context of law enforcement, which is 17 years, I have seen more and more added onto law enforcement. We've dealt with mental health issues. We're dealing with substance abuse issues. Our main focus was crime. That's what the police originally came out for, was to combat crime, and we've become pastors, ministers, counselors, parents to some, and So yeah, you know, way too many things have been added on, and those are not things that the police were originally designed for. So it was it kind of feels like it's one of those things where and rather than hire somebody to do this job, we're gonna add it onto their job, and that's what's happened, unfortunately. And it makes it difficult to do the job. Yeah.
So it sounds like you'd be open to some discussion of looking at that as an issue and.
I don't know if it'll ever happen. I think it's a big issue. It's more of an issue than we'll ever solve here. It's a large issue, mental health funding, et cetera,
Right. Like in some ways I was thinking about it as, it seems like we broke out, Leho to be the detective, and from all accounts I've heard, that sounds like it would work out great. And I wonder if other things could be broken out like that. I mean, maybe it's a discussion for later, but something to think about. Yeah, I think that was pretty much it for the questions I had. Oh, the other thing was, I asked in a separate email about training about racism for police.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded like you didn't have any, you have training in, what do you call it, unbiased policing, is that right?
Right.
But not specifically.
Bias-based policing, right.
Sorry, what's it called?
It's called bias-based policing, which is mandated, again.
Bias-based or bias-free?
I'm pretty sure it's called bias-based, so it talks about the bias and non-bias in law enforcement, and so that's a mandated training anyways, and that training includes race, gender, sexual orientation. It's a gamut of everything. There's so many things other than just race, to look at and make sure that there's no bias in any of that. And so yeah, it's a training that really takes in. So there's race in there. There's gender in there. There's a lot of things in that particular training, and every officer is required to go through that training. And there's constantly different upgraded trainings and newer trainings that come along with those as well. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. Those are the questions I had.
I think Doug had a question.
Is there training to dealing with specifically with mental health issues and or domestic violence, and how much and how frequently are those trainings done?
Yes, on both. The domestic violence is biannual, and the mental health the required training is a one-time training that they're required to do, but we generally have. We subscribe to a lot of different online trainings that have those types of trainings available, so that we can go through those and update those. But the required one for mental health is once a year. Once you get your certification, it's a one-time requirement for the mental health one.
Rob?
Kind of two parts, I think they're related. One, just on training to avoid racial profiling, and then two, what's the does the town have an official policy with regard to cooperation with ICE, and border patrol, and if somebody were stopped for a traffic violation and they're not a citizen, you're pretty sure that local farm workers who might be undocumented, do you just give them a traffic ticket, or do you contact ICE, border patrol, or is there an official policy on that?
There's actually a state policy that we're all required to adopt, that the AG vetted, was actually written by the Attorney General's office and then handed down, and we were all required to adopt that policy well, there's a lot of parts to it, but to your specific question, if a person we don't enforce federal law, we enforce state law. So immigration is a federal law violation, not a state law violation, so that's not of concern to us, so we wouldn't contact ICE or Border Patrol or whoever's doing that. Or say it was a traffic stop, it would be our concern would be what for the traffic stop was, not whether or not they're here legally or illegally. So we wouldn't be contacting ICE for that particular situation, no.
So now you would not contact Border Patrol or ICE
Right.
in that case?
Right.
Yeah. And what about racial profiling so that doesn't happen?
So Vermont has again, there is another state mandate and a law that annually, information from each department for our traffic stop data, gets sent to the, Vermont Criminal Justice Training Council. And then they've hired I guess it'd be called a repository for information, which compiles all of that information and tries to make sense of it. So for the best that they can, and then that information is available out to the public from the training council. So, and that's kind of where you keep track of that. Something we do here, anyways, I don't know if every agency does this, but I'm sure probably many do now, is we also pull random traffic stops. Video, we're all video. We have cameras. So we have both cameras in the car. We have cameras on the officer's body, so that we can pull those, supervisors can pull random traffic stops. Anything to do with those videos can be pulled for review. If somebody were to come in with any type of a complaint, obviously we're going to secure that video and have a review. There's also a policy on how long each thing that's recorded is kept, whether it's a criminal violation, a civil, etc. So there's also, and that is all kept. So we do actually reviews of how an officer is performing with anyone, on a traffic stop or anything. So we'll do different reviews.
What happens if Border Patrol or ICE contacts Hardwick Police Department and says, I'd like you to go and check on this person? There's no traffic stop or anything involved, it's just check on this person.
Yeah, we don't do any, so they would, I'm assuming they would want us to check because of a federal violation, and we don't do federal violations. So we have utilized federal agencies to come help us on different drug investigations, etc. But we don't do immigration. We don't have anything to do with immigration. It's not what we do.
I think this is a perfect example of why having a community meeting would be great. I think the questions that Lucian, everyone's asking, are the questions that are on a lot of people's minds, and have been. So I think whatever you need help with, Erin, in terms of coordinating that. I know Amy Rosenthal and Community Allies are really interested in supporting some sort of community discussion. So maybe that's something that the select board can help facilitate after we have our resolution conversation. But I think it's amazing to learn all the different things that you do. And so often, I know this is, for a lot of educators too, like you never really know until you ask the questions and you hear about it. So I really appreciate you, Erin, taking the time to answer those questions and to inform us about it.
I actually have another question.
Perfect.
I didn't see that one on the list.
I was wondering, so I can't remember where I saw it, but I saw there was data on race data on traffic stops. I think it's traffic stops, or I'm not sure if it was police activity in general. But it seems to me that'd be really hard to collect, because how do you collect the race of a person who you stop?
So it is difficult, and it's not a perfect system, as apparently there have been varying studies done. There was a UVM professor that did one study that was disputed, and there's been different ones. So they are requiring the officer that's doing the traffic stop to guess at the particular race of the person that they're stopping. I don't think that's right, that it should be put on the officer to have to guess a race. My personal feeling is that if it were on their driver's license, that information would already be in the system, and when you stop that person, the officer is not guessing at an individual race. The race is already documented. So I think the system could be perfected, but maybe my idea isn't the most popular one, I don't know.
Okay, I was just curious how that worked. 'cause
Yeah.
It seemed like it was.
No, we're simply giving our best guess, and that's all we can do. That system was again, another hat put onto police officers that I think is really unfair for us to have to try to guess that.
Thank you. Something.
Yeah, we are under a border patrol's jurisdiction, correct? We're within 100 miles of the border, so that, they ever hold up against you guys and do enforcement without notifying you, or?
I've had no contact with Border Patrol, so I don't know. No.
All right, so I'm gonna feel we had a great ending to this conversation, so I really appreciate that. Yes, we have one more.
Aaron, I want to commend you for your lack of defensiveness. I should imagine that in the atmosphere in this country over the last couple of weeks, that being a police officer makes you feel like you've got a target on your back, and I really appreciate how you have just sat here and answered these questions with no defensiveness, no excuses, just this is the way it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm done,
All right.
for now.
You good? I just had a statement that if I could take just a quick thing.
Yep.
I just wanted, and I put this at the end
Oh,
of,
yeah.
when I was talking to Lucian, I just think, and it kind of follows up with what Wiz had to say, we do feel a target, obviously, across the country, for some terrible actions of, some rogue officers really is in bad training maybe. I don't know, all the answers there, but I do want to point out that when I talked to Lucian yesterday, we were at 107 line of duty deaths in this country of police officers. When I checked this morning and I refreshed the page, there's 108. So another one last night at some point in time. So 108 police officers have been killed in the line of duty in this country. This year alone, we're only about halfway through the year. It's destined to be one of the highest death rates of police officers in a single year. We're headed in that direction. And in the last 5 years, we've had 971 line of duty deaths of police officers in this country. So obviously I'm a police officer, so I just wanted to take a minute and recognize what good people are doing in this country, and there's great people in our profession, and hopefully people can see that and understand that there are those of us that are just trying to do the best we can to keep everybody safe. Yep, thank you.
All right, so next item is actually your item 2, which is a new police officer appointment, correct?
I thought I was done.
So tell us about Katie Semino?
Semino. Katie came to us. She is a sergeant in the military as a military police officer. She currently has a bachelor's degree and is obtaining her master's through Norwich University in criminal justice. Sean actually talked with her the other day too. Very level-headed, optimistic, eager individual. So she would be kind of where we've had some really good luck with officers, and our intention is to put her through the part-time class. Obviously, as we've talked before, it's about a year before we can get them into a full-time class. So She's looking to get into law enforcement. She obviously has, military experience. She's worked on the counter drug task force through the military, so she has quite a bit of experience. I asked her if she knew what she was getting into. She claimed she did. So, she went through all the exams that I pointed out earlier. Did great on everything, and we're really pretty excited to have her come on board. So she would fill the remaining open position that we've had open for about a year and a half in that. So, Liz?
Why does she want to come from Hardwick?
She lives in Stowe. She had actually been recommended. I knew some of the people she had talked with, and she was recommended to come talk to us. As we had an opening, our department was actually recommended.
Those folks want to move to Hardwick too.
What's that?
Do we have any officers besides yourself that live in Hardwick?
Both myself and the sergeant, Darren also lives in Hardwick
Okay.
too. So yeah, those are the only two right now that we have. Yeah. It fluctuates. We've had.
Cheaper than living in Stowe.
We've had. I know.
Work on it.
I know.
You get to come to Hardwick during the day.
We'll work on it.
For a shift.
It's nice to have people that are.
So, I think, I think it's a great, different perspective that she'll bring, to the department, so I think it'll be exciting.
Congratulations on your new form.
What's
I
that?
think it's a new form.
That wasn't that was Sean and,
Okay.
in Casey's doing, yeah.
So we had no, actually the previous iteration was no all men and women, and they said, no, that's not, we need to be careful with that. So, we looked a little bit further, and this is what was recommended. So, it's about the action that you'll be taking. That's the root of the discussion. So it does address the previous concern that was brought up.
Yeah, thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
That's Casey's work there.
All right, so we have a officer appointment before us. Would someone like to move to appoint Katie Semino?
I move that we appoint Katie, is it pronounced Semino, Aaron? Do we need to read
And
the?
she's on orders, otherwise I would've had her come tonight. She's still on orders till tomorrow for doing the COVID, all the stuff.
She's been providing support for this in-state.
Move to appoint Katie Semino to execute the office of police officer for the town of Hardwick.
Yeah, excellent.
Second?
Any more discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you to Katie, and thank you, Aaron, for bringing it to us. Next is item 4 again, which I think we're gonna change to 5. Update on delinquent taxes. And, yeah, all right, so where's this, at the end, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I don't know if you all saw this, but I'll just read up the overview. So, this is as of June 16th. Total delinquent is 176,890. So it's down quite a bit from our last update, so that's good. This day last year we were at 140, so we're a little bit ahead, but gaining. So we currently have 11 contracts. The total of those contracts is about 31,000. And just as a little background, the contracts run 2 cycles for 6 months. So we have some that are June to November, the ones that came and signed up quickly. And then the others are July to December. So any going forward will also be July to December. We sent out the first set of notices on 5/29, which did generate a fair amount of payments after that. We are planning to send the second round of notices early next week. We actually wanted to wait until after this meeting. So basically, we typically send the final list, those that have not paid in full and have more than $100 balance and have not set up a contract, either right around June 30th or July 1st, because we have to give the lawyers time to do their title searches and post all the notices in the newspaper for the tax sale. And then we usually do the tax sale between August 20th and 30th. So,
One option, so generally, it looks like we're not really that far off of last year, for example, in terms of delinquent taxes. But we could choose to delay the tax sale if we thought that that would actually help people pay, because I think it's important to remember that the whole process is designed to try to help people pay their taxes. We don't actually want to sell anybody's property at tax sale. We just like them to pay their taxes.
I was wondering about the timeline on still out there. So taxes are due May 10th. And the tax sale are people that didn't pay the taxes May 10th, or is it from previous cycles?
no, we do tax sale twice a year. So
Okay.
the August round is for people who didn't pay in May. Then we'll do another one next March, which would be it's a smaller sale because it's going to be with people who didn't fulfill their contracts, basically, which isn't a lot. A lot of times there's only 2 to 4 properties in that March sale. The August is a much larger one because it's everybody who didn't sign up for a contract, didn't pay on that May 10th date.
Oh, so it's people who didn't come in and work with you on a contract, they just have basically ignored the whole thing.
Correct.
Okay.
Just in a point of clarification, as Eric said, we don't want people to be in this situation, but depending on what happens with the discussion now, assuming there were a tax sale in August, and I'll just pick a date, let's say it's August 12th, the way the process works is someone else is going to offer a bid for that particular property. The owner who is in arrears has 1 year to pay that off, so there's some additional time, right? It's not like August 12th, I've lost my property.
Right,
Just
you have additional
the way the state statute is written, you have the opportunity to buy it or pay it off before it officially transfers ownership.
But you're right, Lucian, that you had to buy it back, you'd have to pay all
You gotta
the
pay a
attorney
penalty.
fees.
That's
and
correct.
Interest and
That's
everything.
correct.
the bill goes up significantly.
Oh, yeah.
if that
It
happens.
goes up.
Really.
And we encourage people to come in and do a contract and make payments because once it gets sent to the lawyer's office, there's automatically going to be additional attorney fees. So even if they were deemed between, say we send it to the attorney's office on July 1st, he does all the title work, posts it, there's going to be additional fees even if they pay it by the tax sale. So it's really beneficial to come and see us and set something up before it goes over to the attorney's office for the sale.
Do you think it's worth do you think it's worth maybe, like, I never, until I was on select board, I never realized that this is an option, the contract thing, and I assume it says it when you mail out the late notice, but.
No, it doesn't, but
Because I wonder if people just don't even know, if maybe a real explicit thing about come talk to us, or a phone call or something would, I mean, maybe we don't do it every year, but, or maybe we do, I don't know.
we
But-
do like second and third notices and sometimes, and then people who have a small balance, we do like one every month until they pay usually, so we do several notices.
In
We'll
that
write them
notice,
out.
you encourage people to contact you.
It does have a paragraph.
So they
that
do
says-
have-
Point of
they do
clarification,
have
if
some-
you missed your timeline,
Uh-huh.
and we have sent information, Amanda in my office is in contact with those folks saying, please be in contact with us, you've missed your deadline, we need to make arrangements for you to enter into a contract. So they get that information. Absolutely, absolutely.
I don't think it's specifically
Yeah, I
says
can picture people.
contract, but reach out to us for options.
Yeah.
Kind of thing is the language, so.
Okay, because I was
Okay.
worried that people were at home knowing that they don't have the $3,000 or whatever, and just freaking out, not knowing that they have other
Right,
options between.
So Kaylee,
I just have a budget and timeline question. So I assume the August date is related to our budget somehow. Is there a time that we would need to, can we wrap August into March? Or do we really need to have for the Hardwick budget a time, like what's the restriction in terms of money if we make anything from the tax sale, or if it's just, like, is there a timeline that we really need to have it by for the town?
Well, so I'm sure that there's a the August date has been in place for a while. I'm sure you know the reason why it was set for that. I think it's just more initiative to keep things moving because the longer you put the tax sale off, then it's, not getting it.
So I don't think that, I mean, I'm just thinking, like, looking at these, the numbers that are outstanding in delinquent taxes are smaller than our fund balance. So I don't think that there's a sensitive timing issue, other than the fact that the longer people wait, the more interest they accrue, and
And it spirals because then if they're going into March of next year, their
How are they gonna
next
pay
year
it May?
taxes are due May. If
Yeah.
they haven't paid the previous year, they're spiraling into a 2-year cycle.
yeah, and so it's really, yeah, it's really about that more than the budget. And actually, well, Sherry may recall more, but several years ago, or a while back, we weren't terribly aggressive, or we weren't very diligent about this whole process, and it wasn't quite as formalized. And when it became more formalized, the amount owed in delinquent taxes came way down. When it was just like, all right, so this is the process, then,
People did get more notification, there was more education the information was out there that they could make a payment plan, stuff like that.
Right.
And I just wanted to just note that this year, our federal taxes and our state taxes got pushed to July 15th.
yeah,
So it's,
some people could
I
be waiting.
assume it's highly possible that some of these people are also struggling with those amounts, or maybe they're gonna get a refund, I don't know. But I would suggest, if we could, to push the tax sale maybe to October. Like, could we do that? And then
We can
it would
do,
just allow that, we can't do 4 months, and April to July is 4 months. We can't, I don't imagine we could do 4 months, but of a delay, because then you get into holidays and that's a big mess. But couldn't we
Push it to
push the
October.
tax sale out to,
mid-October, so 2 months back from,
so that
gives people a little more
it
time.
gives them a little bit more time to like get, maybe they're back to work, maybe they're, all kinds of things are falling back into line for them. I don't know, that's a suggestion.
The biggest thing, though, for anybody listening is to contact Amanda in the town manager's
To
office if
get
you're
the
behind,
plan,
and just
make a plan.
talk to her.
Could we have 2 options? So if somebody wants to pay, if somebody doesn't want to accrue interest until October, could we have, basically October be an extended date? Not necessarily there'd be I'm just thinking about if there's this higher level of interest, would you end up paying more in October than you would in August? It's just a question.
Yes, you would.
Yes,
Will you,
because
1%?
Going to,
Right.
even with the payment plan, you're
You're gonna
some
pay-
interest and penalties, but it's nothing like having something go to tax sale.
So it's,
Right,
it's
right.
1%
Okay.
for the first 3 months, then 1.5%.
Okay, so
That's
it's- okay.
added on.
Okay.
So the first month 1%, second month 2%?
Well, the first day is 8%.
8% penalty plus 1% interest.
Can I just offer, I think we've talked about this, but I want to just hit that point right there because our office has had, town clerk's office as well as town manager's office has had some questions about the penalty. And on face value, the assumption is that the town of Hardwick was the one that determined the 8% plus the additional 1% for that missed. And for clarification, that was state statute. Why I'm saying was, still is. But, bear in mind, we had a little bit of discussion at this prior meetings. The legislature was considering allowing for an adjustment. Our due date on our taxes was the 10th. That fell on a Sunday. What that meant was you had up until 5 p.m. on the 11th, which was a Monday, to make a payment. The law change, as signed off by the governor, did not take place until May 15th. So I've explained this to a couple of people this week. The town could not make an adjustment because that change was 4 days after our property tax due date. So I just want to make sure people understand this. We couldn't make an adjustment there. We just did not have the opportunity. Now, what happens, from here moving forward, we're talking about an opportunity right now. So I've got some guidance from the League of Cities and Towns on tax sales, and what it lists is delinquent tax collector and select board together could come up with a COVID-19 related temporary policy to address tax sales. Such a policy could modify the delinquent tax collector's typical policy on how and when delinquent tax collection will proceed, or delinquent tax accounts will proceed to a tax sale. So examples are extending the time frame or circumstances of when the typical sale would initiate. So it is listed in the league's guidance as an option.
I'd be in favor of moving it up a couple months, like you're saying, give people a little bit of time and maybe leave the interest, or you're thinking of interest free, either way, fine with me.
Do we need to just make a motion to have you make a policy for us to approve at the next select board meeting that extends the, is that what we need to do?
I think a motion, yeah, a motion to change the date on the tax
Okay,
sale
so
would
we
work
don't-
for us, I
okay.
think.
Okay, so it doesn't be as formal, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sounds good, yeah.
Because we don't have a separate delinquent tax collector, Sean's our tax collector.
Is that, are there complications for the town offices that we're not seeing for that, or is it just that you just push it off? I mean, it's not a,
I'm seeing what we have in contract phase versus what would potentially be going to tax sale as two separate things in my mind. I don't see any complications there, other than we're pushing it out, to Eric's point.
No, we'll
But-
just have to, once tomorrow, I'll touch base with the attorney's office.
Yeah, you're just
to
checking
make
the
sure
attorney, give him a heads
timing
up.
is gonna work for them, because we'll just have to set a new date, but we can work around, if you say, okay, we're gonna move the August to around mid-October, then we'll just work with him to schedule something around that time. And they'll give us a deadline of when we have to send everything over to them, which will be more, usually probably like 4 to 6 weeks before. So it'll be more like September instead of July, it'll be a couple extra months.
Yeah? So, somebody want to make a motion to extend to push the tax sale date out to mid-October with the,
Call it a temporary policy, please.
you think?
That's what it
I don't
says
think we need
here.
to.
Okay.
I don't think we have a
Okay, good.
policy.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm
Well,
good.
maybe we do, I don't
I
know.
don't know.
But this time, I
If you make a
think we
motion.
should have a motion to change the fall tax sale date from mid-August to a date in mid-October that works for our attorney.
So moved.
Second. You got that, Casey? Okay.
Any more discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Could I just bring up one thing, because I saw listers were putting a sign out there.
Yeah.
So that is a sign for people who are, what's the wording?
Grieving their assessment.
Grieving, the sign's kind of funny. So.
I know, you can only grieve in this narrow window, otherwise you're out of luck.
So, but that's for people who are questioning it in some way. That's their method to bring it to the listers and then
That's questioning their,
potentially bring it to the Board of Civil Authority, correct?
yes, maybe, or does that go
Or is
directly?
it directly to the Board of Civil Authority? I don't know.
So that's to the listers, and it's particular to, so they're just setting the grand list, which is the value, the assessed value of everybody's property. If you
not
are,
the same thing.
it's not the same thing, but
Okay.
it's nice that you bring it up, because if people are interested, if they have reviewed the updated grand list and think that their property is valued incorrectly, now is the time to, or whatever the date, the times on the
Yeah.
Sanders board tell when you can talk to listers.
And point of clarification, what they do as a pre-strike, if I could call it that, they're looking at any significant changes that they have come across on the grand list. So they've mailed out to 70 contacts, here,
Right.
just be advised. So it isn't necessarily, it hasn't gone out to everybody, but they went to those that had a significant change. Don't ask me what that parameter was for the significant change. So
Yeah. that's something.
that would be the lister's office on that issue.
Sorry, now I don't know where we are. All right, so we're done with item number 5, the delinquent taxes. Moving on, item 6. Select board to review and sign fiscal year 21 Lamoille County Sheriff's Department dispatch contract. And, I mean, we could discuss this, but I don't know what good it does, because it's basically a bill. In some sense, there aren't any other dispatch services, and
That's their only option.
Yeah,
I move that we approve the FY21 Lamoille County Sheriff's Department dispatch contract as written.
to the amount of,
Oh, to the amount of $45,405.03 for the provisions of the aforesaid services from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021.
or,
Second,
any discussion?
So this is
that's a
for
lot
the,
of money.
Yes.
so this dispatches the police, the fire, anybody else?
Police and fire.
The police and fire, okay.
Not the emergency?
No, they're a nonprofit, so they have a separate contract, the Hardwick Rescue.
But, and I think that I don't remember exactly, but I think they assess these things based on your call volume, because they do a lot of, towns.
Yeah.
So it's just like a percentage of their cost, basically. So, any more discussion? All in favor of approving the dispatch contract, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is item 7, select board discuss a resolution in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. And we had tagged onto this, policy about signs. One idea would be to, have a small group review. You know, Lucian's already drafted some language, but maybe we could have, if people were interested in like a ad hoc subgroup could just review it and bring it back and.
Including the resolution? So the resolution and the sign
I
policy?
would like that, but it's just me.
I'm sorry, Kayla, what did you say?
I just wanted to clarify that it was the sign, that the group would look at the sign policy and the resolution together? Is that what you were saying, Eric? It's a
Yeah.
little- Okay,
As the signage as part of, that's related to this,
Yeah.
as part of
Yeah.
it.
I would love to support that group slash task force.
So we are, we have another month until our next meeting, and so the sign issue is gonna be ongoing, and I hate to leave Sean stuck with that without any guidance. So I don't know if we can, come up with maybe just some interim unofficial guidance, or,
Sure. Such as?
I don't know.
Well, yeah, my suggestion, I still like, of course, because, yeah, so it seems like it's appropriate. We have an ongoing, like a long-term person who tends to stand out there by the Peace Park. It's called the Peace Park. Why couldn't that be the place where we ask people to, if they feel inclined to create that, put something up that they're not gonna actually walk with and do like a peaceful protest, which they can do anywhere. Then if they're gonna leave it, then why can't they put it there?
Yeah.
What do we envision, like, I don't want to say enforcing, but like monitoring that, like, just like, and what are they gonna be?
And we could say, you know, that the signs could be posted for up to 2 weeks or up to some increment of days, so that then they come down, and then if someone else has something else, so that it's not completely plastered and becomes like a thing. But it seems like that fence
And maybe
that
this
little
is,
park is kind of a good place.
and maybe this isn't the forever policy, maybe this
This
is
is the interim.
just for like the current times and we,
For the next month.
Until we have a permanent policy.
Okay, so I have a couple of things I just need clarification on, how you want me to proceed with what's existing in the Memorial Park, you know, anything else that comes up on other town property. And just, go ahead,
Okay, yeah.
one other thing, and I'm sorry I gotta broach the subject, but it literally has come up already. So what happens if somebody shows up with a Confederate flag in the Peace Park? You know, what do I do?
Let it be. If we say that's where you put your opinion,
That's, yeah, that's
You
just
may
making
not
sure,
agree.
I mean, I don't wanna be, I've already gotten in hot water about, you know, an action that I've taken on this issue already, trying to avoid that.
but if we say between now and a permanent policy, this is where people should put their stuff, and if somebody puts a Confederate flag, that's their First Amendment right.
I think that's really
I don't know if it is on our
It's
property.
their yard, but.
Well, I think
But
this,
if we're saying that that's where they can put it, that's where they can protest,
Oh, boy.
You know what we could do is we could just say that we approve of signs, because it says that the select board has to approve of the signs. We say we approve of signs about the Black Lives Matter movement in the Peace Park until our next select board meeting, or something like that.
Yeah.
Could say that.
And then, someone with a Confederate flag wanted to come and ask us, then they could do that.
Kayla?
I'm sure that there are other municipals dealing with the same kind of question. Can we
Reach out
kind
to
of
the league.
look and see what Montpelier's doing? Because Montpelier's taken a local pretty incredible stance towards this. Like maybe and they also had vandalism around that as well. So I wonder if we could build off of what you probably have already done this, Sean, too, but it's tricky because I think obviously everyone has the right to free speech and that's really important, but if that starts to hurt people in town, then that's a totally different thing. And so that could be, I think maybe if it's the Peace Park, maybe there's like a description about what that means. Maybe it's like signs that are, obviously we can't prescribe what people are going to be putting into a public space if we're opening that up for signs. But that park has kind of a mission, has always had a mission to it. So I don't know, I'm just thinking that I agree with you totally, that but I think we do have to be prepared for that reality if that's what we want to do for the time period.
But I guess I don't understand what
We're just for the possibility of signs that could potentially emotionally hurt other people if it's totally opened up. This happened in Craftsbury. It's a really important conversation to have, and it's really important to have that conversation even with just flags and with symbols, but it is something that we would have to be prepared for, just happening on its own.
Right,
You know,
like there's vulgar language or anything like that, it's just like,
I mean, I guess that's why they have in the thing here, it looks like they're encouraging individual signs to be approved, or individual
now you understand my dilemma.
Yeah,
thing.
it's
Yeah,
a really
yeah.
tricky one. It's a really,
Yeah.
really tricky.
it is.
So, we're trying to balance, not to change the subject matter, but, here we are, this last couple week period talking about trying to promote some outdoor seating in our downtown area. And, depending on where to come up there, the family rolls into town and they just keep right on driving. I mean, it's just, we gotta really be careful here.
Yeah. But at the same time, we have to balance that with,
Yes, absolutely.
with things that are real
Yeah.
going on in the
Which
world.
is what you've been trying to do, and it's difficult.
Trying to, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I also, just on a personal note, would love to refer people who want to fly the Confederate flag to the memorial room in this building, which lists the names of the Vermonters who died in the Civil War defeating the
Who
Confederacy. Or who served, yes. Some of them
some of them died, but the list is people who
who
served.
served. So Vermont was not part of the Confederacy and fought against it, just for clarification.
Right.
Anyway, sorry, that's my little sense. I don't know what we do about signs. I mean, Lucian suggested we could say in an interim, just guidance would be the signs related to the Black Lives Matter movement can
I mean, the other
stay
thing-
until the policy is revisited. Or we could just say the policy is you need to check in with the town manager's office before you put up the sign. But then John still needs guidance.
Right,
Right.
but he needs guidance.
I mean, the other thing we could do is we could have a meeting, schedule a select board meeting, not a regular meeting,
Yeah,
and say, in a week, we ask everybody to come to us and ask us for their signs. We won't force this for a week, and then, but you have to have permission after that for
Yeah.
the town meeting.
Permission from whom?
that.
you what?
I don't think we're going to do that with people who, protest and just put up the signs, they all just go put it there, so we'd rather just have a place and not have to come to a formal meeting and say, I wanna put this banner out that says X, Y, Z and get it approved. I think a lot of people will just do it anyway and not,
Yeah,
it'd be hard to enforce, I guess, is my opinion.
yeah.
It is kind of the manner of the movement now is, right, is protest and put up signs and
Well, I think certainly in honor of the history of Juneteenth, I don't think that we should take those signs down and the memorials down until after that date in honor of emancipation. But that's also, it's just that's my personal feeling.
Yeah.
That if we were to take those signs down before the date that we, before our date of emancipation as a
If
country.
you directed me to, I would not, to be clear. I would not do it on the 19th. That's where I was going at it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, so that's just.
And
a
we
concern.
haven't necessarily decided that we are going to take them down, to be clear.
Right,
Okay?
right.
Then there's the whole other issue of signs, like people plant signs, they don't often come around and clean them up when they start to look ratty,
Right.
right? I mean, there's a whole other like kind of practical approach beyond the message and whatever, like eventually they become trash.
Right.
And I don't know what the answer is, maybe as an option, to allow, I just don't, I can't be the one to judge, is that respectful or not? This is, this is one of those things, right?
Yeah.
And, is there a component of, okay, it's gonna be allowed for a limited amount of time and then removed? I mean, maybe that's an option. I like what Sherry said about a dedicated space moving forward,
Yeah.
right? So, I'm not sure what the best scenario is.
I think we're not gonna, unfortunately, I think we're not gonna come up with something right now. I think this is something that requires a little more deliberation.
It seems to me that the resolution that was initially proposed should be decoupled from the sign issue, in my opinion.
You think?
Yeah, because, that's my 2 cents, but it's the board's prerogative.
Yeah. Well,
We
they
don't need
are
for-
kind of separate.
We don't meet for another month.
True.
That's
We
all.
don't have a scheduled meeting for another month.
That's,
We
sorry,
could have a
correct
special
statement.
meeting.
We could have a special meeting. Yeah.
Thank you.
We could work out the resolution and have that prepared. If that's the only thing we're doing, I think we could do that before a month.
Sure.
Say that again, Nick.
We could do the resolution, like you said, we could meet
Oh, that's okay.
outside of the regular schedule and develop the resolution that comes from the select board within the next week, probably, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I think Sean was actually hoping for the faster motion on the.
No.
No, on the sign policy? No, you're thinking we could move the, oh,
I
okay.
mean,
Yep.
people are,
just
the
want to
the
set
violation
it.
exists now,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah,
This is such an important societal issue. I guess that's what changed how I went about it, from one issue on whatever day it was to last Friday.
yeah, yeah.
I can't be the one to determine this on behalf of the town and the citizens. That's why I need your guidance.
I think Sherry's idea is a great one, and maybe we can combine it with a mission around this movement and the kind of mission of the Peace Park, and that it's up to your discretion, Sean, if things start to change or signs start to fall apart. In our policy, it is that signs can be removed at the convenience of the town, so that it can be up to you to kind of, and certainly as a community member can kind of keep an eye on that area, but that might be at least until we have a different resolution and policy. I don't know how many people will also read our resolution that says you can put signs on in the Peace Park unless we advertise that. So if it's only being discussed at this meeting, I don't know, they just won't be taken down, right? So I don't, unless we advertise it as a place where you can put signs other than doing it right here and in our meeting minutes, it's.
Or maybe people already realize it and that's why those signs are there.
Right.
I mean, I think it's unclear if there's actually a current violation. I mean, it doesn't get Sean off the hook anyway, because he's in a position, but because it says it's for advertising or community events, and that's neither one. It's a political.
Well, I go back to the policy from December 1st, the first sentence does clearly indicate prohibits the placement of signs on town property. The zoning bylaws do indicate temporary signs or banners advertising public or community events to be displayed in designated locations on town property with the prior permission of the select board, as Eric has already mentioned.
But
It's not a public or community event.
Community event.
I mean, I know it's a little technical.
Public or community events is the intent there.
Yeah.
Those are exempt from the bylaws and from zoning.
Will we say that again?
The advertising public and/or community event is considered an exempted, not needing a permit. You still need to get the select board's permission, but you don't need to file a permit with the zoning office for that particular sign.
Oh, I see. So otherwise you need to file a zoning application for a sign. Oh,
Certain
okay.
signs, yeah.
Huh. Okay.
so,
Eric, we have a.
Ross, would you like to?
I appreciate listening to the conversation. The First Amendment is a very complex amendment, even though it's few words. The swing bridge has been a Hyde Park corner, if you will, for years. People have displayed banners espousing politics, religion, whatever, symbols, and again, defining the First Amendment is, I agree with Sean, is to put that on his shoulders is very difficult. And I'm not a lawyer, let alone a constitutional lawyer. I don't think you are either, Sean. The town has a history of allowing that spot, the bridge to be used as it's been used over the years. And, the historic events that are happening right now have pushed the board, pushed the town, and all of a sudden, how do we grapple with this? And, just reading Tom and Ty Gilbert's article in the Gazette, that explained exactly why they hung that banner there. It's like, to me, it makes perfect sense. And does a symbol or a banner or something on the bridge go beyond both ends of the bridge? And it seems in this case, yes, the feeling was the intent of the banner went beyond the end of the bridge. And it's just so complex. And if Tom and Kai came to Sean and said, we'd like to put the banner back up, it's kind of putting him back in the same position. He made a decision, and so he's being asked to revisit that decision. And I'm not sure, tell me if I'm wrong, that you're going to have any easier time responding to such a request. And then again, there's some other banner, sign, symbol to be put up there that we as a community find exceedingly offensive. What happens? And it's such a complex issue, and I don't know what the answer is, but I think in saying when you can put up signs in the Peace Park, well, then you're saying no longer will the swinging bridge be a Hyde Park corner. So if that's the case, that's the case. But there are implications of that. The Christmas wreath is put up there every holiday season. That's a symbolic representation that serves a segment of the population. It doesn't serve everybody. And some people find that offensive to their religious beliefs. It's complex. And I don't know what the answer think that whatever has been and is on the bridge, if it's seen as the ends of the bridge, the sidewalk, the parking lot, that's where it ends. And, it doesn't, in this case, the banner telling the guy put up, the arrows on it weren't intended for anything beyond the end of the bridge. I mean, just think of it, if the arrows had been on the other ends of the two words, the racism banner would have been pointing at the co-op and the bookstore. What's the sense of that? How does that make sense? And so to interpret that the arrow pointing to the west of the bridge is targeting the school system, the chief of police, I don't know why it didn't target the two select board members who also live right across the bridge. I live on the west side of the river. It just to take whatever is on the bridge and extend it to have meaning, personal meaning, targeting specific people, just doesn't make sense to me unless it's very, very explicit. And just looking at that particular building, there wasn't anything explicit the way I looked at it, and others that I talked to said, oh, that's targeting Aaron, that's targeting the LSSU. Another person told me Thomas had that banner hung in his barn for some time, and I don't know what's on the east side or the west side of his barn, but those arrows.
I think we get your meeting. So I'm gonna note that it's now 8:45, and I think that, as I think we've demonstrated, that we're not coming to decision tonight, even though we'd like to have decision. So I think we need some people to volunteer to work on the resolutions for the Black Lives Matter movement, and some people could be the same, could be different, to work on the our signage policy.
What was that?
I just, we didn't do anything yet, I just said that we need,
To work on the Black Lives Matter.
and the signage, yeah.
Can I just ask a question
Yeah.
before we do that? And Ross, thank you for bringing all this up. I wonder if, granted it's almost 4th of July and we don't have another meeting until end of July, if it seems like the resolution is a really, really important conversation for all the select board members to have and the town. I would personally, if I was on that group, kind of feel uncomfortable coming up with a resolution, not talking with the town manager at the same time. Could we schedule a meeting specifically to talk about the resolution and kind of the questions that we would want to have, and then have the sign group work on the sign policy for the next meeting? So that way, it just feels like a really big, really important conversation to have. I don't know if that's possible. Or if, if there's 3 of us, are we then in a quorum and then we're basically having a meeting anyway? So that's another question is, can there only be this is my first time, can there only be 2 people on a group like that?
I think we could have more than 2. I recently reviewed the open meeting, and I believe that an ad hoc committee who is just developing something to bring back to the group and is not voting on anything and is not encumbering funds can meet without warning and all that, was my understanding. Has anybody read something like that? Because I read that this like a couple days ago. I can follow up on it.
Yeah.
So I think we could have 3 people, for example, work on that instead of just 2.
And then in terms of science until our next meeting,
And we could meet again in the interim.
This is also like such an important conversation and thought process for everybody in our community and our state to have. I just speaking for myself, would feel fine leaving them up in the Peace Park or really anywhere in Hardwick, and just kind of seeing what happens. And and then it can be up to, obviously that's against our policy, but maybe we have a period of time where we kind of just let the community express itself in a, I don't know, just a.
Let it ride for a little while.
Well, I think we should try to do a sign policy as soon as we can.
Okay.
And if that means today or that means next week or whatever, just we have time to meet. I don't think we should let it ride for a month. I mean, it's all on Sean's shoulders, so let's not do that to him.
So we could aim to regroup next week
That'd be a good
on
idea.
both these issues.
Yeah,
And we could probably meet during the daytime, would be easier for the office folks.
that'd be fine with me, yeah.
Wherever you wanna go. What's the inclination then with what's existing now in the Memorial Park as well as what's in the Peace Park?
If we let ride,
Wait till we
go.
meet again next week.
Just leave it.
Yeah. Unless there's something that's, specifically,
Considered offensive, if you will.
Right.
I mean, I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
just bounce it off, folks. I
If
don't
it's-
wanna have to get into evaluating 20 cases moving forward. Hopefully, we're not into that.
Right, but we
Right.
can't know.
and I mean, we could have an emergency meeting if it really got bad or something, but
Have a what?
an emergency meeting if things got bad.
Oh,
we had to really,
right,
like,
yeah,
do
yeah,
something
we had to.
Bad, I don't
Nah.
think so.
So we're gonna meet, Sherry's got our calendar out, she's scheduling us.
Yeah, whatever you wanna do. Daytime thing, Sean probably has a busier, like, do you have meetings next week?
Just Thursday morning, I know usually is blocked out.
Okay.
I don't think I have necessarily anything that's blocked right out. We have to, I gotta follow up with everybody in regards to the water and wastewater meeting.
Oh, yeah,
What about Tuesday?
about Wednesday. Is Wednesday not good?
But Tuesday afternoon, I can't do it. Well, I can't do it after 3. That could be earlier than that.
What about Wednesday?
Wednesday would be fine for me, except that I did just register for the role of the Board of Civil Authority in the tax assessment appeal process webinar on Wednesday afternoon from 2 to 3.
Ooh, aren't you good?
Through I was gonna put that in new business, but now it's out there.
All right.
So,
And you
anyway.
registered through the league?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
an email that we received, it's
Uh-huh.
a free webinar, and I thought it might be
That was a good idea.
useful.
When is, and it's not all day, is it?
It's Wednesday from 2 to 3, it's 1 hour.
What about in the morning on Wednesday?
Sure?
Yeah. 8 o'clock?
8 o'clock?
In the Peace Park.
In the Peace Park? 8 o'clock up here.
It'll have to be remote for me.
Oh, okay.
I'll be
Wait,
away.
is there, would you?
That's okay.
Is that okay?
Call
I
in,
can just call
okay.
into, yeah,
Call-in's okay for you?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
We'll meet up here.
Yeah, do we have the technology for a phone up here now?
We have cell phones these days.
Oh, yeah, that's right. All right.
So Wednesday the 24th at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
You'd be able to notice on that?
That's why, yeah. And the only thing on the agenda is the 2 things, the sign policy and.
Black
then-
Lives Matter resolution and some review of sign policy, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, what do you think about, sometimes working on these things with a lot of people is really cumbersome.
Yeah,
And so in some ways, it would be,
if people could work on things before, and that would put us farther
That
ahead.
I didn't send you, because I didn't know if it was an open meeting thing.
oh, okay.
Those are just thoughts that I had.
Okay,
Well,
good.
Lucian's,
I guess
Lucian's already done some great
Yeah.
work around
So-
pulling it together.
Yeah.
It could essentially be reviewing and kind of going over the edits of that, and thank you
Yeah.
for doing that, Lucian.
For now, or at the next,
Yeah, I mean, for,
For Wednesday.
we could get our edits to Lucian before that meeting and then look over the second draft.
okay.
Sounds
Yeah, I'd
good.
be willing to do that.
Yeah. And Sherry and Wiz, was there some murmuring that maybe you guys would take on the signage thing?
I was murmuring, she didn't murmur back.
That's why I'm pushing.
I don't think they allow it to continue, so we can talk about it.
Okay.
And bring something on Wednesday, but from
Okay.
now until Wednesday, just leave them alone.
Yeah,
And if Eric and,
unless,
if they wanna, bring that idea, Eric, but, the banner, they need to go get it, and, if they wanna put it back up, it'd be nice if they just put it in the Peace Park, but if they're intent upon having it on the bridge, because they think that has something to do with their message, then that's one thing. But it doesn't sound like it's actually about that, it's about the sign.
With regard to that, could the town have a responsibility to contact Tom and just inform him that you want to do that? I mean, I haven't talked to Tom, right? And I have nothing to do with putting up the banner or anything. I just raised my concern to Sean, all of you.
Yeah, I didn't know whose site it was until tonight, so. Let me call him, I'll call him. See if he wants to go get it.
Okay, that sounds good.
okay,
Is that the police station, is that what you said?
yeah.
I mean, if I need to, I can bring down, if he's uncomfortable with that, I can get it to the manager's office, whatever he's comfortable with. There's no ill will, I just want to be
Right.
clear, there's no
Yep.
ill will here.
Yeah, no, it's just we're all muddling through this. so,
Yes,
Yep,
and in
Yeah.
that regard, I like to muddle on to select board reports.
yeah.
Good, none, new business?
Well, I don't know what my thing falls under.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Well, I went up the rail bed, up to Woodbury, and it
Oh.
looks great. Somebody, I assume it's Danny and the four-wheeler crew, did some raking out of it, and they did some drainage, and they did some seeding and some mulching.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to thank them for doing that, and just let people
Did you
know.
go on bike?
I went on my bike,
It was
yeah.
good?
Yeah,
Nice,
you know,
awesome.
mountain bike, probably a little sandy for skinny
Yeah,
tires. so
Sandy, yeah,
It's riding great.
awesome, thank you.
I did ride shotgun with Danny in the enforcement vehicle 3 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah?
The
So
sirens.
he had given me the heads up that, he was gonna be talking to Aaron, so,
Yeah.
don't wanna dissuade any, folks from using our trail system. Come and visit and use it. It's a good trail system in our community. So, follow the rules, of course. But we got good opportunity here for sure.
Did he, did you get confirmation that he did the grading and stuff on that? or-
He had mentioned a number of places, and I have to admit, I don't recall if he said that particular section, but I'm assuming he would have been the one.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah. Any old business?
The townhouse, lease is pretty overdue. It's
Oh,
signed by
shoot,
John
sorry.
Jewett. So we're gonna, we'll get together to try to work out.
Thank you.
Seems like we just did that.
Well, it's,
Yeah?
the lease, I think it was signed in 2013 or 12.
No, we
and
got it
it
more current on that.
automatically renews year to year, but it's time to just take a look at it. We're gonna, review it.
Oh, we're current, but maybe an update is what you mean to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
Just
Oh,
take a
okay.
look at it and see
Thought
what
I
it
missed the
takes.
timeline.
Because recently I thought we changed the operating dates. I thought within the last 5 years. Well, maybe not.
No.
I don't know.
No, not
Okay.
No. Well, we did change the operating dates, but we didn't change the lease. So that is one of the updates that.
Oh, that's not in the lease?
No.
Oh, all right.
We.
But you're on it.
Yeah, NECAR's asked for
Yep.
that to be
Yep.
amended, and so it was amended, but it's not part of the actual lease.
Okay. So you're gonna work with Sean on that?
Yeah.
As required. All right, great. Any other old business?
Super, super quick.
Yeah.
But it's just a plug for the US Census.
Oh, yeah,
It
that's
is
important.
so easy to fill out.
Yeah.
It literally took me a minute and a half for me and my partner, and it means so much. It means that USDA grant for the Judavine. It means a lot of our grants. It is so easy. However we can help to spread the word on filling it out. It is,
Yeah.
Yeah, because apparently the
programs.
launch is low.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Really
the
low.
turnout is very low.
Yeah.
So.
Food programs that folks are taking advantage of now,
all
so
kinds
it
of
is
stuff.
very important. Our percentages are off what we did in the last 10-year cycle, as I said last time out. I don't have the most current update. Thank you for reminding people.
Yeah, and I know you've been pushing it too, Sean.
Speaking as a historian who did a master's thesis based on the census, if you want to go down in history, fill out the census, so somebody 100 years from now will know that you were here.
There you go. All right. And on that note, let's adjourn.
Can you make sure everything gets signed that went that way, please, everybody?
Oh,
before you
this
leave?
Yeah,
one.
we've got a big pile right now.
Ross, thank you. Ross, thank you.